governors and mayors faced with the possibility of federal troops being put on their streets feel a sense of alarm about what's going to happen. They should be able to do two things at once. I agree with you,
and that's why the Rev is talking about partnerships.
I agree with you. Yes. Well, if there was any evidence that the White House wanted partnerships. I think
right. And that's why the Rev says you set them up. You're giving me false choices here, John Heilemann. Now, we're talking about setting the president up by saying, let's have a partnership. And when he refuses, then the onus is on him.
We're not in disagreement about the notion that the right politics here is to say, yes, we have a problem. Yes, we would like to have a partnership. Can we have that? I think this is what Wes Moore did very effectively, which was, of all these governors, the one who's played this the most adroitly has been Governor Moore, who basically said, hey, Donald Trump, we've made a lot of progress here. Why don't you come to Baltimore and take a ride around with me and see the progress we've made, knowing that Donald Trump would not take him up on that. I agree with that. That's a more adroit position to land in. I got a little bit lost because I thought we were talking about COVID and the COVID vaccines at the very top, and we went into crime. Those are obviously two different issues. And Joe, I just wanted to get you to clarify your point, which is, that you said you thought that Trump would end up opting for his legacy rather than opting for his base. Like, it seems like he's going the opposite direction when it comes to how he's handling the CDC and what he's now putting on Truth Social. So I'm just curious what I haven't seen the indication of that. I'm curious what you're seeing. What makes you think he's going to go back that direction?
I think what I see is when you say, hey, I'm going to ask the experts, I'm going to ask the scientists to weigh in here. When all the evidence is, and Donald Trump will even say this when he doesn't have a microphone on. Operation Warp Speed was like one of the greatest scientific achievements like in a generation. So I'm just not, and we always talk about any presidential library he does, the first hallway should lead to an exhibit where you're saying, this is how Operation Warp Speed, which people said couldn't be done in a decade, we did it in 9 months and saved tens of millions of lives, reopened businesses in America across the world, victory, victory, victory. I don't know how easily he hands that legacy away because of trolls on X.
I agree, and that should be number one on the presidential resume, if you will. But to this point, to what John said, he hasn't yet. He has distanced himself from it. When he got booed at that rally that we've talked about a few years ago, rare moments where a Trump crowd turned on him. And now we see on social media, days after he did tout it in the cabinet meeting, he did in that 4-hour meeting. He was like, hey, this is an important thing. He's now backed off that again. So we have to, and we've seen the accompanying moves at the CDC. So it's an open question where he'll end up, but he's not leaning that direction.
Can I ask a question? Like, I don't understand the loyalty to Bobby Kennedy Jr., who I think most people were warning at the beginning would be the worst cabinet officer other than the DOD guy.
I think that there's a couple things here. There's been reporting on this. We reported at the time during the campaign. Trump told people around him he was very enamored with the idea of a Kennedy name. He's someone who loves legacy. He loves dynasty. He's always wanted acceptance from the elite.
I don't think he's a part of the Kennedy family. They have basically.
Well, they've pushed him out, but
genetically speaking, he's part of the Kennedy family.
I know, but
just as a matter of
he is still the son of Bobby Kennedy.
Yes, that's right.
And that.
So you think it's a Kennedy mystique?
I think it's a Kennedy mystique. I think it's a little bit of a sticking it to Dems. Like, I've taken one of yours, even though this Kennedy has not really been a liberal Democratic Kennedy in a while. And I think it's the mystique. Like, look, even a Kennedy is working for me. That's what one of his aides told me during the endorsement period.
Well, if you remember, the earlier period of that was that they were terrified that Kennedy would be the one third-party candidate who could peel off votes for him, which goes back to our questions about political calculation. The size of the anti-vax movement in America, which is not anything like a majority, but is a healthy chunk of the MAGA base and growing. Seems to be something that Trump seems to be interested in catering to. And just to make the point that Mika, that you just acknowledged to a second ago, again, if I saw Trump making the move, which is, hey, let's just ask the scientists. The people at the CDC are the scientists. The people that he's backing Bobby Kennedy on having fired. I mean, they're not the only scientists, but they are some of the most respected scientists in this field. So I find it. I'm 100% with you. But what Lemire said at the top of the show, it should be. Operation Warp Speed, the first exhibit, and should take up a whole building of the Trump Library if there ever is one. But right now, I don't see any indication that that's what Donald Trump wants to build his legacy around.
I guess that's what surprises me, that he's allowing, that he would allow RFK Jr.
to push him around on this?
Mr. Bear Eater, worm in his head, whack job.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that Donald Trump, Rev, I mean, you've known him longer than anybody. I find it hard to believe that he would let this guy undermine his greatest legacy.
I don't think he's looking at the guy. I think he's looking at the brand. I remember when he won the election in 2016, and I came on right here on Morning Joe about 2 days later, and I said, you have to remember, Donald Trump was an out-of-borough guy, felt rejected by the Park Avenue crowd that ate breakfast at the Regency and went to lunch at the lounge at the at whatever Four Seasons restaurant.
Right.
He was a reject by that crowd. And I went on to say that's how he appealed to voters, and I was explaining why I thought he upset the election. When I got off the air, about an hour later, I got a call from Donald Trump. Al, you got me. You know them girls, so-and-sos never looked up, never respected me. Can you believe I'm president of the United States, not president-elect? I said, I'm having a hard time believing it. But he called on it because he knew.
Because you knew.
And because I knew, and I was an outsider to the, quote, black establishment, so we knew each other. I think the fact that he can say, I have a Kennedy, is like somebody that grew up poor saying, I have a Cadillac. He sees a Kennedy there, and he's willing to bend over. I think the dessert he gets on that is he also brought a certain amount of voters with him that he had organized, because Kennedy was getting some voters, and I think it was a plus for Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's right. Literal Park Avenue, the Kennedys, the apartment on Park Avenue. It is that legacy, and it's the idea that they now work for him. That's why.
Yeah.
Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Always good to see
Thank you.
Coming up on
Thursday.
Morning Joe, U.S. stock futures are lower overnight as investors take in the latest developments in President Trump's trade war. Yet by some measures, U.S. stocks have never been this expensive or more concentrated in fewer companies. CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin joins us next to explain ahead of this morning's opening bell. And as we go to break next Wednesday, September 10th, Joe and I will be at the 92nd Street Y here in New York City for a conversation with Ed Luce of the Financial Times about his biography, My Father, former National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, and its connection with current world events. There are just a few days left. To get tickets, visit 92y.org.
For the exact things that Donald Trump is stripping away. We need access to education, but he's dismantling the Department of Education. We need access to health care, and he's stripping away Medicaid. We need families to be able to put food on the table, and he's stripping away SNAP benefits and making the cost of groceries go up. These are not the things that get to the root causes of violence or crime, and we are going to stay focused on doing what works here in Illinois. It's been working, and we're going to continue making progress. We're not where we need to be, but we're headed that way.
The White House really slammed the governor and was critical of his statement this weekend, calling, if National Guard moves in, calling it an invasion, he said it would be. Do you think that goes too far in calling it an invasion? Are you playing into the White House's hands in using the language?
No, what we are doing is calling out what's happening, which is we are looking at the rise of authoritarianism right in the face. I mean, this is a president who is a weak man who wants to be the center of attention, and he wants to manufacture a crisis so that we can distract from his failures. And so this is an invasion. This is him sending a surge of ICE enforcement and also wanting to hopefully in his mind federalize National Guard so that people will feel that it's normal to see troops on the street, armed guards or tanks. This is not normal, and we cannot normalize it. And so we're calling out what he is doing, because what he wants to do is he wants to see a crisis so that long-term people will say, oh, look, this is what we needed. It's not what we need. There's no emergency here in Illinois. We have not asked for this. He's not coordinating with us. And people of Illinois have made it clear this is not what we want. and we will not roll out the red carpet for a wannabe dictator.
What remains a mystery this morning is what it looks like when he says, I am going to make Chicago streets safer, beyond what you have laid out, which is immigration enforcement. So that remains a big question today. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time. John.
All right, Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. preparing to face tough questions from the Senate after upheaval at the CDC over vaccines. This tension could reach a boiling point this week. New accusations against the Trump administration for, quote, making a mockery of science. This time it's over climate. And millions of Americans waking up losers. You did not win Powerball. The next jackpot, well over $1 billion. What you need to know by Wednesday to keep $2 in your pocket.
Sept allopurinol is approved for adults with bipolar 1 disorder with acute, mixed, or manic episodes. Unlike some drugs for bipolar 1 disorder, nausea, vomiting, and restlessness are not common with Sept. Sept may be associated with serious side effects. Elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis treated with antipsychotics are at increased risk of stroke or death. Sept is not approved for elderly with dementia-related psychosis. Sept prolongs the QT interval and may be associated with abnormal heart rhythm or sudden death. In 5% or more of people in clinical trials, heart rate increases, dizziness, hypotension, weight gain, dry mouth, stuffy nose, sleepiness, and increases in liver enzymes have been observed. These are not all the side effects. Talk to your prescriber and learn more at sept.com. By Vanda Pharmaceuticals.
Why suffer from congestion when you can Navage?
Before Navage, I was not living my best life because I could not breathe. Constant nasal congestion, constant blowing of the nose. And the huge difference is the fact that Navage pulls it out.
Navage helps relieve congestion in just 30 seconds, rinsing away the allergens, dust, and germs other options leave behind. It's that simple.
It's worth every penny that you pay for it.
Buy doctor-recommended Navage today.
Our homes are filled with dust mite allergens. You can't see them, but they can trigger your allergies. We have a solution. Introducing Pacogen's anti-dust allergen spray. Scientifically proven to stop dust allergens so you can sleep better and breathe easier.
This is the newly redesigned Dell AI PC with Intel inside. It's not just an AI computer, it's a computer built for AI. So you can do the stuff that slows you down way, way faster. Like that. And that. And yeah, that too. It's a U multiplier, so you can get more done quicker, which means you get to be done sooner.
We're traveling all across America, talking to people about their hearts. How's the heart?
Good.
You sure?
I think so.
How do you know? Let me show you something. Put 2 fingers right on those pads. Look at that. That's your heart.
That is pretty awesome.
With Cardio Mobile, you can take a medical-grade EKG in just 30 seconds from anywhere. Cardio Mobile is proven to detect atrial fibrillation, one of the leading causes of stroke. Cardio Mobile is now available for just $79. Order at cardia.com or Amazon.
My hair looks thicker, it's fuller. I have seen a lot less breakage. I love Plant Chair 39.
The 3-step hair regimen for hair over 40.
Especially when we get into our menopause journey.
I wash my hair about every other day with the shampoo and conditioner, and I use the tonic every day.
And I haven't had as much fallout.
I have so much less breakage.
Less shedding.
I notice in the shower that I don't have globs of hair in my hand.
I'm more confident.
It looks so much better.
I highly recommend it.
Over 500,000 people with AFib have left blood thinners behind. With Watchman, a safe one-time implant that reduces stroke risk and bleeding worry. For life. Watchman. It's one time for a lifetime.
I got hooked on fentanyl. Before you do, look in the mirror. First, my teeth started to rot. Then, my skin turned blue. I started to age very rapidly. I lost my hair, my dignity, and every friend. And I will only be remembered as that drug user. Don't take fentanyl, because if you do, you'll be dead. Like me.
Join President Trump's fight to end the fentanyl crisis.
This morning, students at Harvard are returning to class with the campus in turmoil as the university continues its battle with the Trump administration over federal funding. A federal judge is expected to rule soon in the school's case against the president. Harvard had asked for a decision before tomorrow, TBD if that will happen, but billions of dollars in research funding is at stake. We've highlighted that over and over again. This comes as another American institution is facing uncertainty over its federal funding, the CDC. The agency lost about a quarter of its staff during widespread layoffs of federal employees led by the Trump administration earlier this year. And last week, CDC Director Susan Menares was ousted after clashing with the HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over vaccine policy, according to sources. Now, joining me right now is former acting director of the CDC, Dr. Richard Besser. He and other former CDC leaders have been speaking out, arguing, among other things, that Secretary Kennedy is endangering every American's health. It's good to see you, Doctor. Thank you for being here. You had said in this opinion piece that you all put out, this call to action really is that your goal in speaking out was to make sure that people understood this is not normal what's happening at CDC and HHS. That shouldn't be allowed to continue in order to try to keep attention on it. Have you heard anything from the HHS secretary or the department at all in response?
You know, Kate, this is a call to action, and it's a call to action to a number of different groups. One of our big goals is that we're hoping that by keeping attention on this issue that Congress will do its job. You know, Congress plays a really important oversight function when it comes to the actions of the administration, and they've been missing in action. And there's a lot that they can do to call this secretary in and ask questions as to why he is dismantling a critical piece of our health security in America. It's also a call to action to medical societies that are starting to make recommendations that we can trust in place of some of the recommendations that the secretary is making that aren't based on science and evidence.
The secretary is set to head to Congress and testify before, I believe it's the Senate, this week on Thursday. I mean, in your call to Congress to do its job, its oversight, authority, and responsibility, I mean, have you heard anything from relevant committees? Or specifically, especially I'd even say, key lawmakers like Senator Bill Cassidy, who was a critical voice and vote in getting RFK Jr. confirmed?
Yeah, you know, Senator Cassidy is critical in this situation. I was really pleased to see him put out a call for the committee that advises the CDC on vaccines. They're supposed to hold a meeting in a couple of weeks. He said that meeting should not take place. And the reason for that is that Secretary Kennedy removed all of the experts from that committee and brought in quite a number of anti-vaccine advocates who agree with his take on vaccination, but are not the people who should be making recommendations to the country. I hope that in those hearings that Senator Cassidy asks some hard questions and that we understand why the secretary is so intent on destroying the Centers for Disease Control.
You know, the president was on social media yesterday. He gave another example. It's like trying to walk something of a fine line between touting his successes and, for some reason, not angering or getting in the wrong side of RFK Jr. and the MAGA base of vaccine skeptics. You know, Operation Warp Speed, he has called it one of his greatest accomplishment in the development of the COVID vaccine in 2020. Now Trump says that he wants more detail. He wrote this in part: many people think they are a miracle that saved millions of lives, meaning the COVID vaccines. And then he writes, others disagree. With CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer and I want it now. And I'm just curious, what do you do with that? Because what amount of data, quite honestly, do you think, given RFK Jr.'s history, what amount of data is there that is going to convince RFK Jr. to change the views that he has publicly held for 20 plus years?
Yeah, you know, Secretary Kennedy is one of the nation's leading anti-vaccine advocates, and so I wouldn't look to him for evidence. I would agree with the president when he said that warp speed was one of the crowning achievements of his administration. The fact that within a year of a new infectious agent plaguing the world, we had multiple highly effective and safe vaccines was absolutely unthinkable. And the reason we got there was that for more than 2 decades, the National Institutes of Health had been investing in the science and the technology. Now we have a secretary who has canceled further research on that technology, has supported the major cuts to the National Institutes of Health, which funds universities around the nation to do important science work. We're giving up our position as the leader in health, in the leader of understanding new diseases and new treatments, and that just shouldn't be. I'm hoping that if we draw enough attention to this, those people who've been elected to support, defend, and protect people around this country, our elected representatives, will say no. This is unacceptable. We're not going to take this.
My question, though, then becomes, if the silence remains, which is what it seems there really has been in response to RFK Jr.'s moves, what do you do with that?
Well, I think what we do is we recognize that we are in big trouble. We look to medical organizations to make recommendations. We look to the private sector, philanthropy, to try and step in. We look to state health departments to try and provide vaccines for people in their states, even though they won't have the federal dollars to support that. I worked at the CDC for 13 years. I ran emergency preparedness and response for 4 years during the Bush administration. I was the acting director at the start of the Obama administration. This isn't about political ideology. This is about, do you believe in the science that will help protect people here and around the world? And will you support that? That's the reason that we came together, 9 individuals who've run the CDC from the Carter administration through the Trump administration, to say something has to change. This is an extremely dangerous situation for our nation.
And that's I don't know if it's a catch-22 or what you describe it as, but that's what it is. It's the call constantly for more science, release the science, but in believing the science is the step that seems to be what doesn't occur. Dr. Richard Besser, thank you very much. John.
All right, we do have breaking news. Just moments ago, we learned that a judge has ruled that President Trump's use of the military in Los Angeles did violate federal law. I want to get right to CNN's Caitlin Polance for the details on this. Caitlin, what can you tell us about this ruling?
Did violate federal law, and moving forward, Donald Trump can't just send federal troops into cities in California. That's what's happening in this ruling today. It's from Judge Charles Breyer sitting in San Francisco. And this case, it was about the state of California's unhappiness with the way that Donald Trump and the defense secretary employed the use of federal troops after there was unrest around immigration proceedings in Los Angeles. What happened there is that Donald Trump sent the National Guard into Los Angeles. And what the judge says is, you can do that. You can't just send troops into a city for domestic law enforcement, the sort of thing that cities already have police forces to deal with. And that's what's being blocked here. The 300 National Guard troops that remain in Los Angeles at this time, they can stay for the purposes of just making sure that the National Guard is there and keeping things at peace. But what they cannot do, what the federal government can't do, what the Trump administration can't do, John, is send the military into cities to establish a presence and essentially take over law enforcement there. They're not going to be able to do that in California. And John, this is going to be a ringing opinion across the country, as there are other mayors in other cities, Chicago included, just in the last couple days, pushing back against the Trump administration wanting to send federal troops into cities elsewhere.
Yeah, again, it has clear implications in Chicago at this point when President Trump is climate scientists pushing back again.
Yeah, it's a serious pushback. It goes back to Chris Wright, who is the Department of Energy and is also heads the Department of Energy, but was a fracking executive in a previous life and has long said that climate change is happening, man-made climate change, but it's no big deal. It's just an externality. And so he found 5 contrarians, notorious sort of anti-scientists in this field, And they put together a hastily constructed, it sort of reads like a blog post, undermining decades of expertise across different disciplines. And then the Department of Environmental Protection says, we're going to use this new finding and we're going to get rid of the endangerment finding, which regulates climate pollution overall. And so now Andrew Freeman, my colleague at CNN.com, talked to a number of these scientists who are putting together an orchestrated rebuttal, point by point. Some of the things they go after are their dismissal of sea level rise projections, which are actually conservative based on what's happening. Their portrayal of carbon dioxide as plant food, over 1 trillion tons of industrial pollution, excess carbon dioxide is just greening the planet. No big deal. The accuracy of climate modeling, but they say that a lot of their work was cherry-picked and misconstrued, misused deliberately to sort of stack the deck for big polluters like oil and gas companies. And the quote that really hits is Andrew Dessler out of Texas A&M, a really renowned climate scientist, says, this is a rerun of the tobacco battles. The goal here is not to win the debate. They're never going to win the debate. The science of climate change is incredibly solid. All they're trying to do is muddy the waters, create the idea that there is a debate, and the government will use that to roll back regulation. That was Trump's promise to big oil companies. If you help me get elected, I'll get rid of all regulation. And if you look at that tobacco analogy, it's interesting because the cancer rates in this country, lung cancer rates, look like a horseshoe. From the time science said it was bad till the time attorney generals won in court was decades of science denial and marketing that cost lives. They're saying the same thing is playing out now as this climate change graph does. That curve is not bending.
And the shifting government reports are already being used to implement policy here.
Exactly.
So what happens next?
Well, they're trying to get this out there because they're now on a federal public comment period, only a month or two for people to weigh in. So weigh in on the Department of Energy and say, this is not how you run a country or not how you address something that the rest of the world understands is very real and is right now causing health and wealth and happiness of Americans. So who knows? But as we've seen so far, there's no regard for expertise with this administration. They're just chopping it all down.
We'll see what happens during this public comment period. Bill, we are great to have you here. Thank you very much. Kate?
The European Union Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. Donald, you look so utterly weak. The Russians just tried to assassinate the European Union Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. The Russians just tried to assassinate the European Union Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. The Russians just tried to assassinate the European Union Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. Donald, the Russians just tried to assassinate the European Union Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. Donald, you look so utterly weak and pathetic right now as you turn the American National Guard against our own citizens while you have American factories getting bombed by Russia in Western Ukraine, as you have the European Union buildings and the United Kingdom buildings in Kyiv being hit by Russia. And now, as Gunther Fellinger-Jean, who's the chairman of the Austrian Committee for NATO enlargement, says, this is an act of war. Russia just tried to kill our president, the European Union Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen. And where is Donald Trump in all of this? What? You're posting Ursula von der Leyen. And where is the president? This is an act who's the chairman being hit by Russia. And now, as Gunther Fellinger-Jean, who's the chairman of the Austrian Committee for NATO enlargement, says, this is an act of war. Russia just tried to kill our president, the European Union Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen. And where is Donald Trump in all of this? What? You're posting memes, QAnon memes about yourself. You're talking about how you don't want to pay subcontractors. Do you know how utterly pathetic you look? And I guess Donald Trump claims he's now going to go and meet with the coalition of the willing European leaders in Paris on Thursday to talk about security guarantees and what happens next in Ukraine. But Donald, based on your 2-week deadline, 2 weeks, Russia, again, has not agreed to a ceasefire with Ukraine, has not agreed to security guarantees, has not agreed to bilateral or trilateral meetings. You got utterly played, Donald, and our allies are absolutely freaking furious at you. Not only that, but you had the meeting in Shanghai or in Tianjin at the Shanghai Cooperation Summit being led by Xi Jinping, where you had Prime Minister Modi, Vladimir Putin, other kind of Soviet satellite nations that were there as well. You had the Prime Minister of Vietnam and others, and every one of those leaders was freaking laughing at you, Donald, and laughing at the United States. And Prime Minister Modi was doing post after post talking about his meeting with Vladimir Putin, saying it was a delight to meet with President Putin. After proceedings at the SCO summit venue, President Putin and I traveled together to the venue of our bilateral meeting. Conversations with him are always insightful.
Hey, it's John, and before you skip this
held an excellent meeting with President Putin on the sidelines of the SCO summit. That's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin. We discussed ways to deepen bilateral cooperation in all spheres, including trade, fertilizer, space, security, and culture. We exchanged views on regional and global processes, including the peaceful settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. Our special privileged strategic partnership remains the most important pillar of regional and global stability. And meanwhile, you had Xi Jinping, the leader of China, talking about creating a new global order with China leading the way. Prime Minister Modi also posted the following. During the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, I held a fruitful meeting with Xi Jinping. We reviewed the positive momentum in the development of China-India relations since our last meeting in Kazan. We agreed that meeting peace and tranquility in the border areas is very important and reaffirmed our commitment to strengthening cooperation on the basis of mutual respect, mutual benefit, and win-win results and mutual understanding. By the way, do you see that language that Prime Minister Modi chose to use? Win-win, mutual benefit, mutual understanding, multilateralism. It's the system that Donald Trump has rebuked and destroyed. Trump wants to have his own view of a win, that he pummeled our ally into the ground, that they submitted to him. But you're a weak, pathetic, vile piece of trash, Donald. Our allies don't want to submit to you. Why don't we work in the spirit of cooperation? What the hell are you doing? And here's how the Financial Times reported it yesterday. Ursula von der Leyen's plane hit by suspected Russian GPS interference. Officials suspect jamming operations forced the jet carrying the EU Commission president to land in Bulgaria using paper maps. The plane Ursula von der Leyen was on was forced to land in Bulgaria due to suspected Russian GPS interference. There are reports that the pilots even had to use paper maps due to the GPS jamming as they made their emergency landing. Bulgaria has confirmed the incident and added that since February 2022, a significant increase in GPS jamming and spoofing is being observed. They're playing you, Donald, how weak and pathetic you look right now. Here is the press secretary over here speaking at the European Commission meeting. And here's what she had to say, how the EU suspects Russia jammed the GPS system of an airplane carrying Ursula von der Leyen. The plane landed safely in Bulgaria, thankfully. Here, play this clip.
Can indeed confirm that there was GPS jamming, but the plane landed safely in Bulgaria. We have received information from the Bulgarian authorities that they suspect that this was due to blatant interference by Russia. We are, of course, aware and used to somehow to the threats and intimidations that are a regular component of Russia's hostile behavior. Of course, this will only reinforce even further our unshakable commitment to ramp up defense capabilities and support for Ukraine. This incident actually underlines the urgency of the mission that the president is carrying out in the frontline member states these days. There she has seen firsthand the everyday challenges of threats coming from Russia and its proxies. And of course, the EU will continue to invest into defense spending and in Europe's readiness even more after this incident.
Now, here was Ursula von der Leyen at the ammunition factory VMZ. This is where shells are produced in large quantities, not only for Europe's stockpile, but also for Ukraine's defense. 1/3 of the weapons delivered to Ukraine at the start of the war came from Bulgaria. Thank you for your support to Ukraine's defense. It benefits Europe's security as a whole. Here, play this clip right here. Now, more to report from Ursula von der Leyen's meetings, as she, again, was targeted for assassination by the Russia. You can say, oh, Ben, it wasn't targeting for assassination. They just GPS jammed her plane and hoped that it crashed. Come on. Come on. Get smart about this. We know what's happening right now. Here we have Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Tusk of Poland arriving at the Polish-Belarus border to discuss security issues. Ursula von der Leyen says, we have to keep this sense of urgency because we know that Putin has not changed and will not change. He's a predator. In the last 25 years, he started 4 wars in Chechnya and Georgia, Crimea, and the full-blown invasion of Ukraine. Play this clip.
We need to stay consistent and determined in investing in our defense posture. We have to keep this sense of urgency because we know that Putin has not changed and will not change. He is a predator. In the last 25 years, he started 4 wars, Chechnya, Georgia, Crimea, and the full-blown invasion in Ukraine. We know by experience.
And here's von der Leyen talking about the EU allocating funds to Lithuania for monitoring Russian trains. The trains traveling from mainland Russia to Kaliningrad will be monitored. Here, play this clip.
We have already achieved a lot to help Lithuania cope with the constant pressure in the current budget. Lithuania has a 357 million euro EU program that is dedicated for border management and visa policy. We have implemented it, or we have agreed on it in 2021. And since then, we have on a regular basis added money to it. For example, to boost surveillance capacities, tracking the trains. I just could see one of the trains going through Lithuania between mainland Russia and Kaliningrad.
While this is going on, French President Emmanuel Macron says, I just spoke with NATO Secretary General to prepare the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which will take place this Thursday in Paris. Together with our partners and in coordination with NATO, we will work to define robust security guarantees for Ukraine. These are a necessary prerequisite to move credibly towards peace. We will also review Russia's stance as it persists in its war of aggression and continues to reject peace, unity and determination in our support for Ukraine, and an unwavering will for peace. Powerful words there indeed. Here, by the way, are what U.S. soldiers are doing. U.S. soldiers with the 239th Military Police Company of the Louisiana Army National Guard are now patrolling Washington, D.C. But let's talk about the human toll of Donald Trump's weakness. Let's talk about the human toll of it all right now. Here is the price of independence, and it's high. The children of Ukraine's fallen heroes will never forget their parents' deed. From United 24 Media. Let's play this clip.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next investor webinar, where you can drill deeper into our 9 to 13% annual interest rate bond offerings and see how our company has become an emerging leader in the oil and gas industry.
And And I just want you to show you how courageous the people of Ukraine are as they head to school right now amidst the ballistic missiles hitting Ukraine and the Shahid drones and the killing of innocent
The abomination,
Ukrainians
which is
as the genocide by Putin is taking place. Just think about this courage right here. Zelensky writes, President Zelensky of Ukraine writes, today a new school year began in Ukraine. Millions of children will be gaining knowledge, both offline and online. And the first bell is always special. It marks the beginning of new knowledge, new dreams, and new achievements. Today I shared this spirit together with the students of one of the schools in the Kyiv region. I spoke with the children and teachers. The school has everything needed for safe, comfortable, and engaging learning. Accessibility has also been ensured here, which is very important. This is exactly how we must support.
The abomination, which is the president of the United States, Kankles McTaco Tits, who now we're calling Kanks, is an utter embarrassment. But here's the thing. He's listening to the press, and the press, because all observers globally know that he bent the knee to Putin and are asking, what does Putin have on him? So this report surprised me zero. The New Republic report. Trump freaks out over reports he massively fumbled the Putin meeting. No shit. Like, you had a murderous dictator, a war criminal, someone who started a war with Ukraine onto American soil, which he should have been arrested, and in any other country other than China or North Korea or Hungary, he would have been arrested because he is a war criminal. He has kidnapped 1.6 million Ukrainian children, and you rolled out the red carpet. You have not put on one sanction. You got zero of the concessions that you kept talking about that you would get because you're a big deal maker. You're not a big deal maker. You've bankrupted casinos. Nobody can make a deal if they can bankrupt casinos. So then, this is what is also being reported. First Squawk says, Putin praises Trump's leadership, says Russia in talks with the U.S. on mineral extraction in Arctic and Alaska. So I'm sorry, let me get this straight. Donald Trump is going to allow Vladimir Putin, the murderous dictator, to mine U.S. minerals in Alaska? Are you kidding me? He is so beholden to Putin. The question we should be asking every single day, what does Putin have on Trump? Of course, he praises his leadership because he knows he is completely easy to manipulate. He's a useful idiot. But there are reports that Putin, as a KGB agent, has shit on Trump. You're telling me that, oh no, everything's on the up and up when he is going to give U.S. minerals to Russia, but he has imposed zero sanctions against Russia for the war in Ukraine. He says, I called Putin and we talk all the time, and we're going to have a trilateral meeting. Then you hear reports out of Russia that says no such meeting is on the books. There is no such meeting between Trump, Zelensky, and Putin. That is all puffery. And you know why else Putin praises Trump? Because then humiliates him on his state-run TV. Putin has several channels. Donald Trump just has Fox News to spread propaganda. On those same channels, he puts nude pictures of Melania. Now, come on, is that respect? Are you worried about it, Putin? Fuck no. He knows he's weak, and it's obvious he's sick. Everybody knows he's sick. He can't even hide that anymore. But one person that thought he was the heir apparent to the MAGA movement, who went in after Disney because he's a big, strong guy. He's so masculine, even though he wears heels. He said this, and I'm like, is everybody at Fox News just stupid? Play the clip.
Map. Florida has been growing. It's been growing a lot since I've been governor. But even before that, it was adding population, not at the same rate. And we got shortchanged in the last census. We should have had 2 or 3 seats. We only got 1 seat, and that was really the Biden administration's doing. So we are working with the Attorney General in Florida, James Uthmeyer.
Okay, enough.
This viral showerhead boosts water pressure and cuts your water bill by 30%. This dermatologist from New York.
I want to remind everybody when the last census was, where he got one seat and thinks Florida deserved more seats. It was 2020. Show of hands, who knows who was president of the United States in 2020? Oh, no. It wasn't Biden. It was Trump. And so my question to Fox viewers is, they allow all of these MAGA politicians to tank the economy, to ban books, to be the thought police. And then they want to blame it on Biden. At what point are you going to say, really, Ron? The last census was in 2020. Trump was president, not Biden. Is anybody going to just take that over the finish line and just think, oh, we got shortchanged out of the last census? Who was president during the last census? Oh, Trump. Nobody puts that together. Nobody puts that together. And then we hear about Trump. He's raiding John Bolton's house without a warrant. He's his former national security advisor. And then the Daily Beast reports, Trump biographer says the FBI raid on John Bolton is yet another stunt designed to pull MAGA's attention away from Epstein. And what I have to say about that is a shock to no one. You hear Trump is going after Pritzker. He's talking about Beverly Hills people leave their garages open because it's just easier on the garage door for people to steal stuff. He's militarizing U.S. cities. The reason he's doing all that, obviously, is to impede the midterms. But a side benefit of that is that we're not talking about the Epstein files. And what also should be above the fold is the DOJ, led by Pam Bondi and Trump's personal lawyer, Todd Blanche, were able to release the full transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell saying she knew nothing. She had no idea that anybody was doing anything naughty with Jeffrey, and that there were several members of Trump's cabinet that were friends with him, but she didn't know anything naughty was going on. You're in fucking prison for 20 years, bitch. Like, nobody believes you. Nobody's talked to the victim. And the DOJ has not responded to the Congressional Oversight Committee's subpoena for the Epstein files. So my question is, why do you think that is, MAGA? Why do you think that Trump's DOJ is not releasing files, but they're releasing things, the transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell? They've sent her to a country club prison. Why do you think they're not releasing the files? Why? Because Trump is in it up to his eyeballs. And other reports I'm seeing is maybe Melania is in it up to her eyeballs. And then one other thing, this really irritates me. Trump always is the first to say somebody's ugly, somebody's fat. And he does this. I guess there's no mirror at his house. I guess he looks down and he says, oh, my waist size is 30. Because he also thinks that he's 6'3" and 215 pounds, when really we know he's 5'10" at 285. But so Chris Christie got on TV and he hurt Trump's feelings. And the fuck your feelings president, he got his little feelings hurt. So he went to Lie Social and this was his post. And I'm going to take it. We're going to go through it. I just watched sloppy Chris Christie be interviewed on a ratings challenged news show this week with George Slopadopoulous. Okay, so far we've made 2 slurs about people on our Lie Social post. On ABC, fake news. By the way, what the hell happened to Jonathan Karl's hair? Trump, really? Really? You're going to go after some other man's hair? I just think those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. And then he says, he looks absolutely terrible. It's amazing what bad ratings on a failed television show that was forced to pay me $16 million can do to one's appearance. And I have to point this out. They didn't have to pay him $16 million. ABC News did it to bend the knee. And you know why they did it? Because George Stephanopoulos said on the air that Trump had been convicted civilly of rape. And in New York, it's considered sexual abuse. But the judge wrote an opinion and said the New York definition is equivalent to rape in every other jurisdiction. But ABC News bent the knee to Trump because they are short-sighted and they thought it was expeditious. And now he's saying how he wants to pull their rating because you cannot fix somebody that is so broken that they're running around making fun of other people's hair when they have that bird's nest on their head. Then it says, can anyone believe anything that Chris Christie or Sloppy Chris says? Donald Trump is going to call out liars? Are you fucking kidding? The lie-o-meter is broken from this man. Do you remember the way he lied about the dangerous and deadly closure of the George Washington Bridge in order to stay out of prison, at the same time sacrificing people who worked for him, including a young mother who spent years trying to fight off the vicious charges against her?
Is bad no matter who's
Here's
doing
the
it.
thing.
On the morning of the 31st
Donald Trump no more gives a shit about a young mother that worked for Chris Christie than I am going to be Miss Universe. This is a man that doesn't pay his contractors, that he sues people rather than pay them if they have a small business because he can litigate them to death. Okay, I'm going to finish. Sorry, I just get so worked up. And then it says, Chris refuses to take responsibility for these criminal acts. Donald Trump is a convicted felon.
In New York. So, hi, Amy.
Hi, Nermeen, and welcome to our listeners, viewers, and readers around the country and around the world. Yes, this is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Across Gaza, Israeli attacks killed at least 41 Palestinians since dawn today, including 3 people seeking aid in the so-called safe zone of Al-Mawasi. This comes as the Israeli army said today it will end a daily tactical pause in Gaza City that it announced last month for humanitarian purposes, saying the city now, quote, constitutes a dangerous combat zone. This is Mohammed Al-Adam, a displaced Palestinian in Gaza City.
What should we do? Do we stay here to die, to be broken? My 2 brothers died. My mother was martyred. My cousins were killed before my eyes. What should we do? We keep moving from one place to another until God above looks upon us.
As Israel pushes deeper into Gaza City, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called its expanded military operation to seize area a new and dangerous phase.
Unbelievably, civilians are facing yet another deadly escalation. Israel's initial steps to military take over Gaza City signals a new and dangerous phase. Expanded military operations in Gaza City will have devastating consequences. Hundreds of thousands of civilians, already exhausted and traumatized, would be forced to flee yet again, plunging families into even deeper peril. This must stop.
As aid groups warn famine is absolutely ravaging Gaza City, Guterres said Israel is continuing to block UN-led humanitarian efforts and called the famine a, quote, result of deliberate decisions that defy basic humanity. This comes as President Trump met Wednesday to discuss plans for a post-war Gaza with his son-in-law and former Middle East envoy Jared Kushner and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Blair stepped down as Prime Minister in 2007 and went on to serve as UN Middle East envoy until 2015. Last month, it was reported that staff members of his think tank, the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, had joined Israeli business leaders in developing a post-war Gaza plan that included the creation of a Trump Riviera and a manufacturing zone named after Elon Musk, using financial models developed by the U.S. firm Boston Consulting Group. Meanwhile, Jared Kushner has previously praised Gaza's potentially, quote, very valuable waterfront property. In February, Trump called for a U.S. takeover of Gaza and shared an AI-generated video depicting the territory as a luxury beach resort called Trump Gaza.
Donald is coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new life.
Well, for more, we're joined in London by Josh Paul, a veteran State Department official who worked on arms deals and resigned in protest of the push to increase arms sales to Israel amid its assault on Gaza. He's a former director in the Bureau of Political Military Affairs in the State Department, where he worked for 11 years. He's now a director at a new policy, the lobbying organization he co-founded with fellow resignee Tariq Habash to press for a change in U.S. policy on Palestine and Israel. Josh Paul also worked with Tony Blair when Blair was Quartet Special Envoy for Middle East Peace, and Paul was an advisor for the U.S. Security Coordinator. Josh Paul, welcome back to Democracy Now! So if you could comment on this meeting that took place earlier this week between Trump, Blair, and Jared Kushner, and to what extent, in fact, it echoes what Kushner had said earlier last year and Trump said earlier this year about converting Gaza into a Riviera and essentially expelling all Palestinians from the territory.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Look, at the end of the day, this is a nightmarish example of profits over people. What you have with Kushner and Blair is a combination of the corrupt and the feckless. And I say that having worked with Tony Blair, as you say, when he was Quartet Special Advisor, and seen how he prioritized pie-in-the-sky economic programs over the real political progress that needs to be made to allow any sort of Palestinian economic development and reconstruction. Worse than that, they are intimately tied into this Gaza Riviera project, which, you know, is reliant ultimately on the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. And that's the reason that the Boston Consulting Group, which had played a part in developing it, not only withdrew from the project, but fired some of the consultants who had been involved, precisely because there is no way to advance this project without violating international law. So it is a deeply concerning development, and I think shows the continuing path that Israel and other partners of its in the Middle East, other corporate partners, and certainly Mr. Kushner and Blair are trying to take Gaza on. It's a dark path.
Axios is reporting, Josh, that the White House envoy, Steve Witkoff, has been collaborating with Kushner and Blair for months. I mean, if you could talk about this vision of day after. I mean, you also worked with Blair. You have a sense of what they're doing. I mean, Jared Kushner, we haven't heard his name in a while as he works on these global development projects where he and Ivanka Trump are making enormous sums of money from Albania to other places. Going back to that sort of famous moment when he talked about, Gaza being a valuable piece of real estate, and this whole repeated issue of, Trump's Riviera.
So I think for some people, and I include Mr. Kushner among these, everything is about money. Tony Blair and Jared Kushner have played a continuing role in pursuing the economic lane of the Abraham Accords, the effort to normalize Israel's relationships with other countries in the Middle East. Which, of course, have come at the expense of the Palestinians and greatly led us to where we are now. It was not long after October 2023 that Jared Kushner sprung up and started talking about building seafront apartments in Gaza. Of course, this is at the same time that the Israelis are decimating the Gaza Strip, that the UN has declared a famine. We're talking about a development project in which apartments would essentially be built on the graveyard of Palestinians. That is just an unconscionable approach, but it does fit in with the long-term pattern. And when it comes to Tony Blair, my own experience was that he pursues policies that are simply disconnected from the realities on the ground. When I worked with him in the West Bank, he sat in his five-star hotel in Jerusalem, in the German colony, and dictated economic fantasies that went nowhere because there was no political resolution, because Israel would nickel and dime each proposal to death. It was death by 1,000 cuts when it came to the implementation. But Blair was fundamentally unwilling to face this reality, tied in as he is to the senior leadership in Israel and across the region. And so this is, first of all, and most importantly, a distraction from the very real, very urgent humanitarian crisis right now that demands that we do all we can to get Israel to lift its blockade on humanitarian assistance and let the United Nations and other humanitarian agencies do their job. But it is also a very cynical effort to exploit incredible suffering for economic gain.
Josh Paul, I wanted to get your response to the news that broke Thursday. Former U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan now saying he would support Congress voting to withhold military aid to Israel. This is Jake Sullivan speaking to the Bulwark podcast.
The situation as it stands today, following the breakdown of the ceasefire in March, means that a vote to withhold weapons from Israel is a totally credible position. That is a position that I would support.
So that was Jake Sullivan. Meanwhile, the State Department spokesperson under former President Biden, Matt Miller, admitted in May he believes Israel committed war crimes in Gaza, a reversal coming after more than a year as the face of the Biden administration's foreign policy repeatedly defending Israel against allegations of war crimes and genocide. This was Miller speaking in April of last year.
We have been very clear that we want to see Israel do everything it can to minimize civilian casualties. We have made clear that they need to do that they need to operate at all times in full compliance with international humanitarian law. At the same time, we are committed to Israel's right to self-defense.
But during an interview with Sky News in June, Matt Miller said he believed Israel did commit war crimes in Gaza and that Israeli soldiers are not being held accountable.
I don't think it's a genocide, but I think I think it is without a doubt true that Israel has committed war crimes.
You wouldn't have said that at the podium.
Yeah, look, because when you're at the podium, you're not expressing your personal opinion. You're expressing the conclusions of the United States government.
So, Josh Paul, you are a veteran State Department official. If you can first respond to these revelations or this reversal of the former U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, under Biden, someone you worked with very closely.
So what I would say is, first of all, look, it's never too late for genuine contrition, but that's not what this is. Mr. Sullivan is reading the tea leaves, seeing the remarkable shift in American public opinion, and so particularly in democratic politics, and he and others are trying to shift in order to continue to secure for themselves the sinecures, the influence, and potentially the roles in future administrations that they desire. But the problem here is that while the situation is worse now than it has been, the facts are not new, Israel's approach are not new. 15 of us resigned during the course of the Biden administration, resigned publicly because, and precisely because, people like Mr. Sullivan would not listen to those facts and in fact did all they could to subvert an honest approach to this crisis. And so I think that it is, a reflection of the changing American politics that they are shifting their perspectives, but they remain unmoored in any sort of moral grounding here. And I think there has to be some form of accountability in terms of the future careers of these people.
And Josh Paul, I'd just like to go back to the meeting that occurred earlier this week. In addition to Blair and Kushner, Axios, the same article that Amy referred to, also reported the presence of an unexpected third, namely high-ranking Israeli official Ron Dermer, whose input Trump reportedly requested. He apparently said that Israel does not want to occupy Gaza for good and does not seek the expulsion of Palestinians. I mean, Dermer is an extremely senior official in Netanyahu's government. He's Minister of Strategic Affairs, has been since 2022, and is now the head of negotiations for the release of the hostages. So if you could talk about the significance of this, whether you think it's accurate, likely accurate, and to what extent it's representative of at least some people within Netanyahu's administration.
So, first of all, let me say, President Biden, I think, was famously said about Ukraine, or I think it was Secretary Blinken at the time, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. And yet here we are discussing the future of Gaza and of the Palestinians without the Palestinians. So I think, first of all, let's be clear. that this is a discussion that should never have taken place without Palestinian representation. But second of all, let's step back and recognize that, yes, there is very clearly an intent here to impose essentially a new form of colonialism, a transition from Israeli colonialism to corporate, and I might actually be very clear and say Emirati colonialism as well, in the Gaza Strip, that segments the Palestinians into small, manageable groups. I use the term manageable, of course, very cynically, and then imposes these forms of governance that are undemocratic, that are autocratic, and that allow for companies to come in and take profits, for countries to come in and gain strategic advantage. It is, again, I think, very troubling, but let's also note that we are seeing that plan already being implemented. This isn't just something that is being discussed for the future. This is the purpose of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, so-called, at which over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed at their sites, is precisely to start building towards this plan, first with American mercenaries, and then to transition to other countries.
I mean, if you could just tell us, where do you think negotiations stand? I mean, to the extent that Palestinians are involved anywhere, they are involved in those negotiations, and Hamas has reportedly accepted a ceasefire and hostage deal proposal put forward by Qatar and Egypt, but Israel has yet to respond.
So I think, you know, as has been the case throughout the last couple of years, this ultimately remains a question of Benjamin Netanyahu's political interest. Indeed, it's been reported in the last week that even senior IDF officials have turned to Mr. Netanyahu and said, stop, there's no more benefit, quote unquote, to be gained. We are continuing to put at life the risks of our own hostages who are in Gaza. And yet, Mr. Netanyahu refuses to move forward on any sort of lasting ceasefire. And so we remain where we are until he sees that it is in his own interest to do so. And that is just, first of all, unconscionable at an individual level, but also disastrous, I think, not only for the people of Gaza, but for the country of Israel and for the United States in its complicity in this.
Josh Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Veteran State Department official who worked on arms deals and resigned in protest against the push to increase arms sales to Israel amid its assault on Gaza. He's a former director in the Bureau of Political Military Affairs in the State Department, where he worked for 11 years. He's now a director at A New Policy, the lobbying organization he co-founded with fellow resignee Tariq Habash to press for a change in U.S. policy on Palestine and Israel.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and
Trump is not a perfect person. I did not vote for a perfect person. You did not vote when you voted for Joe Biden. I truly believe, though, that Trump has the best interests of Americans at heart.
He's got the best interest of Putin and all the other dictators. That's who he wants. He doesn't care about us. He cares about his dictator friends.
Hey there again, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on the East Coast. I'm Stephanie Ruhle in for Nicole Wallace on this Labor Day. And it may have been summertime, but constituents were not taking it easy. Numerous Republican lawmakers were on the receiving end of serious frustration and straight-up anger from those they represent at recent in-person town halls. And many of these lawmakers were in states that voted overwhelmingly for Donald John Trump. I'm talking about Alabama and Ohio, where constituents slammed Trump's agenda items, things like cuts to Medicaid and the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, his harsh immigration crackdown, the federal takeover of Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump cozying up to dictators. Bottom line, the attendees were loud and clear, saying, we do not want this. Take a listen at a little more of that anger just from this past week.
Trump is doing a great job of securing our border.
Well, the Big Beautiful Bill was actually the Trump tax cut.
And I would also say that Trump is not a dictator, and he is not going to be a dictator. You may think that. He may
personality. I'm not a psychologist. But I'm not going to.
You're not helping me. Believe me, you're not helping me. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start doing your representation of us. And start doing. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start doing take your head out of Trump's ass. You need. Believe me, you're not helping me. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start doing. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start doing your representation of us.
One of the representatives who held a town hall last week, Barry Moore of Alabama, left the event he held in his home district last week through the back door. Moore denied that he had to slip out, saying, quote, "We left like any other event. I think we tried to engage and answer questions, but unfortunately, it got hijacked." But you don't have to take his word for it. Judge for yourself.
Why are people not getting due process? Why are immigrants not getting due process?
So due process for a citizen and a non-citizen are different.
False. False. Lies. The 5th and 14th Amendments allow for it. The Supreme Court has backed it many times. Shame. 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 Bye, Felicia.
Today, on Labor Day, that same anger we heard at town halls is being taken to the streets. More than 1,000 Workers Over Billionaires events are planned nationwide, protesting against the ultra-wealthy and corruption, looking instead to unify working-class people. Today's protests are organized by the same group that led the massive protests on May 1st, and they write the following, quote, "Just like any bad boss, the way we stop the takeover is with collective action. We are Mayday strong, working people rising up to stop the billionaire takeover, not just through the ballot box or the courts, but through building a bigger and stronger movement." The movement against Trump and his party's anti-democratic ways is where we start this hour with three of my all-time favorite gentlemen, the host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller, plus MSNBC senior political analyst and Texas resident Matt Dowd, and Princeton University professor and MSNBC political analyst Eddie Glaude. Mr. Miller, you get the first crack at this. Your reaction to Republican lawmakers getting it handed to them at a whole bunch of town halls.
Hey, girl. Well, it's good to be with you. They deserve it, getting it handed to them. They're doing so few of these. I do think it's making it easy for people who are really engaged and really upset right now to organize and get out to those events. And that's what you're seeing, right? Like, we don't, obviously, Alabama is a red state. That's overwhelmingly voting for Republicans. It doesn't mean that there aren't any Democrats in Alabama. There are Democrats. There are independents. There are people that are Republicans who are unhappy with what's happening in the administration. And those are the folks that are motivated to turn out right now. I think that the thing that is probably the most meaningful about this is, that's what really drives midterm elections, energy, engagement, like which side is more motivated to act. Like, you're seeing these things that opponents of this administration, broadly defined, are the ones that are the most engaged right now. I think that is a good sign for opposition as we head into, I guess there'll be a couple elections this November and then mostly next November. So I think that's like the biggest takeaway. I'm not sure that you're going to see much change in behavior from these Republicans. They didn't, very few of them actually did town halls, and you can kind of see why.
Eddie, what do you think?
I completely agree. First of all, it's great to see you, Stephanie. I completely agree with Tim. I think this is a sign of, among a particular portion of the electorate, of deep disagreement with Trump's policies. I think that's only going to intensify as the tariffs begin to impact that grocery bill and the efforts to purchase goods for families and for children and the like. I think that's only going to intensify. But I've yet to see whether or not this is going to translate in terms of a spine for some of these Republicans, as they see much more disagreement among the electorate with regards to Trump's policies. Will that embolden them to disagree with Donald Trump? I don't think so. Will it give them, some cover to create some distance between themselves and Donald Trump's policies? I don't think so. So it's good for the midterms, I think. But in terms of their relationship to Donald Trump, I don't think anything will change.
Dr. Dowd, let's go to Chicago, because that is a city where Donald Trump may be deploying troops next. It was all
grill him, the secretary, on the firings of the CDC, the resignations, what precipitated that, as well as his own views on vaccines. And I am particularly interested in what Republicans like Cassidy have to say, whether they self-confidence in the secretary and whether they regret voting for him, because Kennedy did renege on a number of promises that he specifically made to Cassidy in order to get that vote, that critical vote from Cassidy for his nomination. Kristen Welker did press another senator on that committee, James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, about that very question. Here's what he had to say.
Do you have 100% confidence in Secretary Kennedy, Senator?
And I could go through several of those things. I don't think he's limiting access to the COVID vaccine. It's still widely accepted. The challenge is it right for children to be able to have the COVID vaccine?
Do you have 100% confidence in Secretary Kennedy?
I believe he is who the president has picked. I don't think he's gone a wrong direction in this.
And so I think what you heard a little bit there was that Lankford, like many other Republicans, is really wary of getting on Trump's bad side. And Cassidy is in a difficult position because he is facing a primary challenge from the right. He's up for re-election next year. But over the last week, he has said that he's going to use his committee, another committee that he sits on, to conduct aggressive oversight. He's also been on social media pushing back on the secretary, pushing back on some of this anti-vaccine rhetoric. So he's going to be definitely one to watch as Congress comes back this week, Katie.
Let me, Charlie, show you what Bill Cassidy reposted on social media. He was reposting a Caroline Leavitt post discussing Trump and RFK Jr.'s commitment to restoring trust and transparency and credibility to the CDC. Then he added this. The president and secretary are right. We need radical transparency. We need to protect the health of our children. The two go together. I'm committed to the president's vision, which is why the HELP committee will conduct oversight. So are you... What is your expectation for, not the Democrats, I know where the Democrats are going to go, but where the Republicans are going to go, given that tweet and given what you just heard from James Lankford?
Well, it strikes me that most Republicans, if you were to talk to them privately, would tell you that RFK Jr. is a disaster. Most Republicans that I know support vaccines for polio, for measles, for COVID, and for the flu. And we have an HHS secretary who doesn't seem to support those things, or is very half-hearted in his support, which is troubling because, the American people want to trust what they're hearing from the CDC and HHS, which has been the gold standard for a very long time. It's not just people in the United States who look to us for guidance on matters of health. It's people throughout the world who don't have CDCs, who need this type of expertise. And the fact that there's this assault on all these folks at the CDC who have doctor behind their name suggests that we are moving away from science and data and evidence and towards something that's much more troubling and unscientific.
Charlie, help me understand the motivation. When you're talking about not just this COVID vaccine, you're talking more broadly about vaccines that have saved kids' lives, vaccines that have saved kids from horrible, not deformities, horrible, what's the word I'm looking for, Doctor? Not diseases, et cetera, from horribly painful lives, polio, et cetera. What is the thinking of Republicans who will tell you privately they think this is a bad idea, but publicly they'll say okay to it and then continue to put these kids' lives in danger? I don't understand that.
Well, I think a lot of them would love to see RFK Jr. fired. I just have to believe that. I mean, and by the way,
so why wouldn't they not come out and grill him on Capitol Hill and demand that?
I hope they do this week. Kennedy has certainly provided them an opening. But, talk to Mitch McConnell about polio vaccinations. He experienced polio as a child. He's been, I think, pretty outspoken. And there have been some others. I mean, George Washington, for heaven's sake, was trying to immunize his soldiers during the Revolutionary War from smallpox. I mean, so this is, the science of vaccinations, I thought, was settled. And I'm saying this as a non-scientist. My daughter's a physician, by the way. But I just like to say that I am just, as a Republican, I am just disturbed that we are somehow ignoring experts and we are ignoring real data and science and in exchange for a guy who's been a Democrat his whole life and who's been pushing, quackery and, frankly, a trial lawyer agenda.
It's not just, as I said, Dr. Adalja, the COVID vaccine. It's vaccines more broadly. What are we seeing across the spectrum?
Well, basically, this is a wholesale assault on vaccines. Secretary Kennedy doesn't even believe in the germ theory of disease, so he does not believe that there's any value to vaccines. And what he's doing is basically dismantling the entire vaccine ecosystem with the tremendous power he has as HHS secretary. And he's doing it very deliberately and tactically. He's taking it apart piece by piece to make it really hostile for vaccine developers or anybody that wants to get a vaccine. And I think what we're going to see is this coming back to haunt us. We already have record-breaking measles cases already with 3 deaths in the United States. We will see increases in other vaccine-preventable diseases as people don't get vaccines or turn away from vaccines. And he's dismantling the CDC and making it probably what will be an organ for anti-vaccine disinformation when he installs his cronies there. So this is a really, really horrible time when it comes to infectious disease preparedness. If we are to get another infectious disease outbreak, epidemic, pandemic, we're not going to see anything like Operation Warp Speed. It's going to be a disaster with RFK Jr. at the helm.
And it's amazing because Operation Warp Speed was spearheaded by President Trump. It was a signature achievement by him. And instead of, touting it and saying, look what I did, I got this vaccine out there. I rushed it through and it saved lives. It was effective. He's now done a complete 180 on it and claims that it's dangerous and wants to see the data that, again, everyone has already seen. Mel Zanona, Dr. Adalja, and Charlie Dent. Thank you. Charlie, don't go anywhere.
Joining us now, ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, California Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia. Congressman, thanks for being with us on a holiday. Members of your committee will meet privately tomorrow with victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Here's what Chair Comer said about that.
The Trump administration is cooperating with us. We're bringing in the families and the attorneys of the victims Tuesday afternoon to talk to the House Oversight Committee. This will be Republicans and Democrats because we're going to make this information public. That's what the American people want. When we travel around all of our districts, that's one of the things that people ask. When are we going to see the Epstein files? But it's very complicated because there are victims of the Epstein files, and we want to listen to those victims and their families and their attorneys to see how best can we present this information.
So Comer there seems to suggest that this will be a bipartisan approach in speaking with the victims, trying to figure out how to best handle their information. Do Democrats and Republicans agree about what it means to be transparent in this situation? Do you see a bipartisan effort here?
I mean, look, there's been some bipartisanship when Democrats forced the release of the Epstein files, and we actually got a few Republicans to vote with us because they really weren't interested and have not been interested in transparency. I will be there with Chairman Comer. There'll be other Democrats and Republicans as we listen to the victims. I've said from day one, they have to be centered in what is happening right now. There have been horrific crimes, sexual abuse, trafficking that has happened to these women, in some cases children. And so we are very focused on transparency for the American public. We don't understand why Attorney General Bondi, why the White House continue to stonewall the full release of the documents. We have sent the subpoena out. Those documents should be in our hand. Now, this week, we're going to hear from a lot of the actual victims. We look forward to that. It's also very important that people remember the horrific tragedy and violence that they all endured.
It is important. And to that point, Ro Khanna, they're teasing that explosive press conference that we may see on Wednesday. How do you make sure that these victims are not being essentially exploited for political gain by either party?
Look, I think that's obviously really important. We have been, the Oversight Committee, certainly those of us Democrats have been working very carefully with the families, with the representatives of any victims. Ro Khanna, of course, is a member of our committee. And so we're all working at the end of the day to ensure that we get justice for the victims and that, most importantly, they are protected in the ways that they need to be protected. And so that has been our focus, and we've been fighting for transparency. We don't understand why the White House continues to cover this up and why Donald Trump, after campaigning years on this topic, has now flip-flopped. And so I hope that the work that happens this week, that the stories that everyone's going to hear from the victims at the press conference, at the roundtable that we're having tomorrow, I hope that motivates not just the White House, but our Republican colleagues to fully support bipartisan transparency as it relates to the Epstein files.
The Oversight Committee has also now requested suspicious activity reports from the Treasury Department related to Jeffrey Epstein. These SARs, as they're called, have to do with red flags that may have been missed in Epstein's financial transactions. What do you hope maybe learn from them? And is this just another continuation of the drip, drip, drip of information that we are getting, as opposed to just a full dump of the files?
At the end of the day, I think that what we want are the full files, and that clearly continues to be stonewalled. Look, I appreciate any additional efforts that we can achieve in the relation to transparency. The more that we can get, the more documents. If there are concerns, and certainly I share those, around the way this case has been handled, and certainly there's concerns the way Alex Acosta, Trump's former labor secretary, who put together Jeffrey Epstein's original sweetheart deal, how that all came to be, what the government has known, what we have in our possession as it relates to documents, all of that information should be available to the public. When I have been home the last few days, and I'm talking to folks here in the community, everyone is asking me, when are the full files going to be released? They don't care who's on the list. They don't care how powerful those people are or what political party that they're in. They just want justice for the victims, and they want the truth.
All right. And I know that you've been pushing to get that so-called birthday book published in your hands. What are you hoping to glean from that? President Trump has said that those alleged drawings that he may or may not have sent to Jeffrey Epstein were fake, that he didn't do that. So what do you hope is in that birthday book that you may glean some more information from?
Well, I mean, to be clear, the president has said that, the drawing and note that he wrote to Epstein doesn't exist. We know it exists. It's been reported on. It is apparently in this book and other documents. And so from what we understand, we'll be receiving that birthday book and note, as well as other documents within about a week. And so around September 8th is the date that we have been told. And so we're glad the Epstein estate is moving forward and producing these documents. And I think that Donald Trump clearly is being caught in another lie. If a book is going to be produced, we're going to release it to the public that he's saying doesn't exist. And so we're all kind of anticipating that release here within the week.
As I'm sure you know, Politico is reporting that FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi are expected to testify before a House Judiciary Committee in the coming weeks. What do you hope your colleagues are going to ask them?
I'm glad to see it. And everyone should be asking, particularly Pam Bondi, the same question. Is Attorney General, you said you had the Epstein files on your desk, that they had been reviewed. Why the huge turnaround? Why the cover-up? Why completely just change your position on the release? And I think that the FBI director, in the same fashion, has been someone that's been calling for the release of the files for years before he was in the government. And so they should align with their position that they've had for years, that had been Donald Trump's, which is a full release of the Epstein files. That is what the American public are demanding, and that's certainly what those of us on the Oversight Committee are demanding as well.
Congressman, why do you think the files haven't been released yet?
Well, obviously someone's trying to hide something. I mean, the White House clearly doesn't want the files released because there's information in there that they don't want out to the American public. What that is, who that involves, I think are the questions. And I think that the American public deserves the answers. Why all of this cover up is what a lot of us are asking ourselves. We don't understand. And so it's time to release the files. Pam Bondi has them. I hope she's asked those questions when she appears in front of the Senate. And certainly this week we'll hear from all the victims and, of course, uplift whatever they have to say.
What do you say to the critics who want you and your colleagues to focus on those bread and butter issues that Americans are dealing with, higher prices for things, and not being able to afford the cost of living and housing prices? What do you say to them? And they feel like this may be somewhat of a distraction to score political points on both sides.
I mean, look, I think what's really important is that and the American public knows this. The single most important issue right now, of course, is lowering the cost for the American public. It's ensuring that people have access to health care. I mean, those are the things that people talk about and that matter. At the same time, this issue is about trust. And it's about the president of the United States betraying the trust of the American public. And if Donald Trump is going to betray you on a key campaign promise as it relates to the Epstein files, he's going to betray you by taking away your health care. And he's done that for 17 million Americans on Medicaid. He's going to betray you by not actually lowering costs, by costs continuing to skyrocket. And so I think all of these issues matter. And certainly when I'm out talking to the public, they're asking not just about health care, but they're asking about trust in government and the Epstein files. So I think it's all important.
And one of the other issues that's clearly in front and center here before you go is DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is now previewing what it may look like when we see a federal intervention in cities like Chicago. Let's listen to her, and I want your reaction.
And this is Donald Trump. They certainly look like they know each other pretty well, don't they?
The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and I was 13.
Before the election, Trump and his associate
a party at Jeffrey Epstein. Mansion. There was an orgy going on, and I was 13.
Before the election, Trump and his associates said that they would release all the information about Epstein's private pedophile island and the billionaires who frequented it.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Then things changed.
Attorney General Pam Bondi's Justice Department says there was no incriminating client list.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Over the last few weeks, I've combed through hundreds of documents and even more videos in order to get to the bottom of what we really know about the Epstein list. I'm going to try to answer questions about how close the most notorious sex trafficker in American history was to Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Whether the world's elite power holders get a free pass to sexually assault underage women, and why both Republicans and Democrats have tried to cover up the story. More than that, I'm going to try to boil down mountains of evidence and theories and speculation around Epstein to try to explain how notorious sex parties on Epstein's island and at his properties in Florida and Manhattan were likely integral to Trump's rise to power, at the same time that they might also turn out to be his undoing. While you have likely seen some of this material before, often in short and disconnected clips on social media, putting it together here in one place reveals a truly disturbing picture. So please bear with me to the end, because it only gets more intense and more bizarre and more incriminating as we go deeper. But my legal team has noted that we need a caveat up front, so I'd like to note that everything in this report is my subjective assessment of publicly available materials. Unless otherwise specified, I am not making allegations on specific criminal activity. Everyone, including the President of the United States of America, is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. However, it's important to note that as far as I'm concerned, the most important outcome of this entire episode has almost nothing to do with criminal prosecutions that may or may not happen in the remote future. What I'm interested in, and what I hope you are as well, is how this information illuminates the character of the most powerful man in the world. Trump and Epstein kindled their friendship around 1987, while both men were budding titans of industry. At the time, Trump was the founder of a real estate empire, including a soon-to-be failed casino in Atlantic City and Trump Towers. Meanwhile, Epstein was a private hedge fund manager catering to what he claimed were only billionaire clients. They both bragged in the press about their fondness for beautiful women. Here are Trump's own words as quoted in a 2002 New York Magazine puff piece. "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." That's a real quote in a piece that was meant to make Jeffrey Epstein look amazing. Trump solidified his position as a professional judge of women's beauty in 1996 when he became the owner of the Miss Universe competition.
Somebody got very upset with me, a woman. I said, no, this is all about beauty. This has nothing to do about anything else.
Right.
Almost immediately, young models, many as young as 13, started accusing Trump of various types of sexual impropriety. Here is Trump saying as much on the Howard Stern show in his own words.
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show. Yes. And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. I want to make sure that
like
everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
And then in another recording on the same show.
Yeah, do you have an age limit, or would you?
No, I have no age. I mean, I have an age. I don't want to be
the
like
upper bracket
Foley with 12-year-olds.
According to flight logs released by the FBI, Trump flew on Epstein's personal plane at least 8 times between 1993 and 1997, primarily hitching rides between New York and Florida. Epstein bought his private island, Little St. James, the year after the flight log's last entry. This means there are no publicly available flight logs to the island, but Trump did tell the New York Times in 2025 that he had been invited to the island many times.
I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island.
Yeah, he called it a privilege. Well, you are free to take Trump's word on the matter. Many women have come forward saying that Trump had sexually assaulted them in one way or another over the last 30 years. They variously reported that rapes and assaults happened in Epstein's presence and while Trump was all on his own. To date, there are at least 27 public accusations of rape, inappropriate touching, and voyeurism by Trump, including a court case filed by E. Jean Carroll. Now, in a taped deposition to that case, where she claimed that Trump assaulted her at a department store in New York, Carroll's lawyer asked Trump about the allegations. And Trump responded that Carroll enjoyed being raped.
She fainted with great emotion. She actually indicated that she loved it. Okay? She loved it until commercial break. In fact, I think she said it was sexy, didn't she? It was very sexy to be raped. Didn't she say that?
So, sir, I just want to confirm, it's your testimony that E. Jean Carroll said that she loved being sexually assaulted by you?
Well, based on her interview with Anderson Cooper, I believe that's what took place.
The attorney also asked him about the now famous Access Hollywood tape, where he said on a hot mic that he liked to grab women by the pussy.
Grab them by the pussy, you could do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the pussy?
Well, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
In a truly revealing moment, he answers one of the lawyer's questions by telling her that she's not hot enough for him.
You wouldn't be a choice of mine either, to be honest with you. I hope you're not insulted. I would not, under any circumstances, have any interest in you. I'm honest when I say it.
I interpret all of this as the responses of a pathological and dangerous narcissist, a man who has never respected women and uses them as objects for his pleasure. The New York court read his statements in the same way, ultimately finding him liable for sexual assault and ordered him to pay a total of $87 million in damages over the course of 2 trials. In predictable Trump style, he has still not paid any of those penalties, even though he has sued media outlets for reporting on the facts. And this was hardly the first time that Trump's sexual activities wound him up in court. He famously slept with the porn star Stormy Daniels while married to Melania.
If you were so grossed out by him, why did you have sex with him?
I still don't know.
This became a campaign issue in 2016 after he tried to pay Daniels with hush money with campaign funds to prevent her from going public. The case dragged out for years until ultimately resulted in 34 felony convictions.
Former President Donald Trump found guilty on 34 felony counts, the first former president of the United States convicted on criminal charges.
Now, the most notable part of this outcome of the trial is the fact that just a few months later, the court declined to sentence Trump to any penalties at all, despite the conviction. Now, this is proof that he was able to avoid criminal penalties by assuming the presidency. But once he became president, well, Trump had a unique problem. He had spent years suggesting that the Biden and Obama administrations were covering up Epstein's crimes. But now that he was officially in charge of those files, actually it was for the second time he was in charge of them, well, now he's responsible for whatever they contain. And this was a big problem because Attorney General Pam Bondi informed him that his name appeared on the list so many times that she needed to bring in 1,000 FBI agents to work on redacting his name out of them. And that is a whole lot of FBI agents. I mean, how many times does your name need to appear in the files that you need 1,000 people redacting them?
This is the world's first reusable cotton swab. It can remove up to 10 times more earwax. Latest studies show that traditional cotton swabs are not
She claims that Trump demanded that she wear a glove while touching his privates because he was worried about germs. And in another event, she says that Trump demeaned a Mexican girl while forcing her to give him oral sex, telling her that he would call immigration on her if she didn't comply. Finally, she recalls Trump wanted to play out a rape fantasy.
Tiffany approached me about a rape scene that was supposed to be played out, and I didn't like the sound of that at all. I mean, it just didn't seem like a fantasy, and I started to get scared, and he was, basically like ripping my clothes off, and I was actually I got freaked out. I told him that I didn't want to do this. I was, I screamed over for Tiffany. She was like, Mr. Trump, she's only, this is scaring her. And he's like, oh, you shut up too. He just turned into this animal. It was like a completely different person. It was like everyone in the room was scared of him. He ripped off all my clothes, and he started to basically have sex with me, and I was screaming because I'd never had sex before. It was my first time, and Tiffany was yelling at him too. She was saying I was a virgin, and he told us to just shut the fuck up, and just basically took my virginity while I was crying and telling him to stop, and that's basically begging for him to just stop.
Johnson eventually dropped the lawsuit against Trump and disappeared from public eye, never giving up her true identity. All that we have are her lawyer's words that she appeared credible, and the question about whether what she says in this testimony coheres with what we already know about Trump as a person. The Epstein saga is far from over. His changing positions have alienated a large swath of his MAGA base. Now, I've even noticed in my own neighborhood that houses around here that used to proudly fly Trump flags have quietly taken them down. One that used to have 10 flags, from thin blue line things to thin red line to fuck Biden flags, has even replaced all of those flags with rainbows and no king's flags. And that's a big deal. Trump even turned on his followers in social media posts calling for purity and loyalty tests, the same kinds that he decried against the woke media. Which means to me that this story, it's not going away. In all likelihood, in the next few weeks, Trump will attempt to clear his name by releasing an interview with Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the only person convicted in the Epstein case. Now, she is currently serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking, but has been making appeals to the Supreme Court to have her case dismissed. Just like with Epstein, Trump has been photographed with Maxwell on many occasions, even going as far as saying in multiple interviews that he wishes her well.
I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach, but I wish her well. Her boyfriend died in jail, and people are still trying to figure out, how did it happen? Was it suicide? Was he killed? And I do wish her well. I'm not looking for anything bad for her. I'm not looking bad for anybody. And they took that and
I mean, she's a child, alleged child sex trafficking.
Big deal. But all it is her boyfriend died. He died in jail. Was he killed? Was it suicide?
In late July, officials at the DOJ privately met with Maxwell, but did not release any information about what they talked about.
Big deal. But all it is her boyfriend died. He died in jail. Was he killed? Was it suicide? Friend died. He died. Died in jail. Was he killed? Was it suicide?
In late July, officials at the DOJ privately met with Maxwell, but did not release any information about what they talked about. A few days later, on July 29th, her lawyers sent a letter to Congress saying that she was willing to reverse years of taking the Fifth Amendment and instead tell the whole truth. But she had a condition. Her lawyers wrote that if Maxwell were to receive clemency, she would be willing and eager to testify openly and honestly in public before Congress in Washington, D.C. She welcomes the opportunity to share the truth and dispel the many misconceptions and misstatements that have been plaguing this case from the beginning. Even though Congress immediately rejected the offer, every part of this stinks. Just after meeting with the DOJ, she was sent to a minimum security facility in Bryan, Texas, known colloquially as Club Fed, which is likely part of an exchange for information. Her testimony, if it ever appears, will likely echo Republican talking points. It will be all Biden and Clinton involved, and Trump will be mysteriously, suddenly absent. This isn't just a conflict of interest. This is direct evidence of corruption at the highest levels of our Department of Justice. Should Trump offer a pardon to Maxwell or reduce her sentence, then he will be rewarding the only person to have been convicted in relation to this case. And that alone is proof enough that he was in on it all along.
Well, I'm allowed to give her a pardon, but nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it.
So here's the point that I've been working up to for this whole video. The entire country knows a lot about Trump's character merely from observing him over the last few decades of his political career and on reality TV. We know he lies and gaslights his opponents. We know that he appears to enjoy bullying people that he disagrees with. And we know that he has never felt an ounce of loyalty to anyone in his orbit who wasn't his family. And he generally has low opinions of women. More than that, we know that he rose to power in part because he benefited from the rise of the QAnon conspiracy theory that pushed a bizarre narrative about a cabal of deep state power holders running a cannibalistic pedophile ring that used children's blood to stay young. QAnon feared that a fascist dictator would come to power and use Black Hawk helicopters as a vanguard to impose martial law and destroy the American way of life. They predicted prison camps in every major city. QAnon believed that Trump would break up this cabal and bring the country back into a sense of freedom and order. Now, while this theory is ridiculous in a million ways, there are no secret rape tunnels under Comet Ping Pong in DC, for example, and the blood of children is not a formula for eternal life. But despite their outlandish claims, there does seem to be a kernel of truth to their fears. Is it possible that this conspiracy theory movement ended up installing the very person who most resembled the villain in their nightmare scenario? Could Trump be a sexual predator and serial rapist who accuses his opponents of the very things that he is involved in? Is every accusation an admission? Is he the face of a cabal of power brokers bent on upending American liberty? If one day we actually get a smoking gun in the Epstein case, will the American people actually do anything about it? Well, what do you think? I really want to know, because I'm thinking about maybe doing a future video on how the QAnon conspiracy theory actually looks a lot like with the Trump presidency right now. It's seeming more and more plausible to me every single day. And on that thought, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video about what we know about Trump and Epstein. I have a feeling that there will be more coming out about this soon, and I might have to stick with the story for a little while.
These back-to-back gestures that people are saying mimicked a Nazi salute. You see it there. Elon Musk has not directly addressed this, but he has appeared to edit out that gesture from the video that he posted on X, the platform he, of course, owns. Help us understand what transpired.
Thank you.
Oh, careful. Careful with that salute.
It wasn't even like a subtle, like a wave, like one of these, like a...
It's okay, it's good to be proud of German culture, German values, and not to lose that in some sort of multiculturalism that dilutes everything.
That's what a Nazi would say.
We don't want Italy as a culture to disappear. We don't want France as a culture to disappear. I think we have to have maintain the sort of reasonable cultural identity of the various countries. Or they simply will not be those countries.
Aber der ist wahrscheinlich für Sie auch ein Nazi, hm? Nazis, 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 lauter Nazi.
USA, 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 USA.
Yes. No, dog. No, this is the Charlie Chaplin mustache.
Hey, so what the fuck was that? I mean, we all know what that actually was, but there are a lot of people online, from Elon Musk simps to professional headline writers for major newspapers, insisting that it was something else entirely. A mysterious gesture, or just what autistic people do, which I can't even begin to pass the ableism of saying that autistic people are just biologically predisposed to seek-heiling, as if we could have just stopped World War II if we just replaced all of the Germans' machine guns with fidget spinners or something.
Sorry, I was stimming.
Besides the people just flat out in denial because they've decided that don't believe the evidence of your own eyes and ears was in fact not an incredibly on-the-nose line from George Orwell's 1984, but actually just words to live by, inspiration, hashtag just girly things. And of course, the editors at the New York Times, the BBC, and the Daily Mail, who were terrified of upsetting the richest man on earth, and are filled to the brim with conservative bootlickers whose one job is to make sure that they don't upset too many millionaires by reporting too many inconvenient facts. On top of all those people, you have the people who think they found the world's most ill-timed gotcha. It's not a Sieg Heil, you see. It's a Roman salute.
Well, that's all right then.
Gee, I wonder what the Roman salute is another name for. And wouldn't you know it, I'm perfectly placed to debunk this ridiculous argument along with all the other ones, because I am standing right here in the city where the Roman salute made its way from anachronistic depictions of ancient Roman art to being the greeting of choice by fascists. This is Rijeka, in northwest Croatia, or as the fascists would have you call it, that is, by its Italian name, Fiume. I am in Rijeka, in Croatia, or as the nuncio would have you believe it to be called, Fiume. This city is the birthplace of, among other things, the torpedo, so that's okay, and the Roman salute, the idea of black shirts, the balcony address, and basically all of the aesthetics of fascism were invented here by Gabriele D'Annunzio during his little proto-fascist experiment, and later basically plagiarized by Mussolini, and then plagiarized again by Adolf Hitler, who then added a sprinkle of Germanness and the myth of multiple thousand years of history for a country that had been around for about 200. And wouldn't you know it, not only was the person who invaded this city and tried to create the world's first fascist state here the one that popularized the Roman salute as a greeting among fascists, but he's also partially responsible for the myths around it, that being that it was a greeting used in ancient Rome. There is no historical evidence for this. The first use of this greeting and the continued use of this greeting are one and the same. The Roman salute is the Sieg Heil. It is a salute designed to be used by fascists to signal to other fascists that they're fascists. And with that in mind, what could this possibly be?
Nazis, 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 lauter Nazi.
So let's talk about why Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, was doing the fascist salute, instead of playing Path of Exile like he was supposed to be. You were logged on, Elon. You were dungeon crawling, Elon. So why were you at the inauguration visibly tripping off your gourd on ketamine, being so obnoxious you got Baron Trump looking at you like Fade Ralpher and staring at Jeff Bezos' girlfriend's tits? Were you playing Path of Exile on your Neuralink? Is that what this head movement means?
Yes.
Elon Musk is the grandson of members of the Canadian Nazi Party on his mother's side and apartheid dipshits on his father's side.
Her parents came to South Africa from Canada because they sympathized with the Afrikaner government. They used to support Hitler and all that sort of stuff. But they didn't know, obviously, I don't think they knew what the Nazis were doing. But they in Canada, they were in the German party in Canada. And they sympathized with the Germans.
Yeah. And as a white South African, soon-to-be billionaire, with an abusive father and the emotional maturity of a syphilitic snail, he was born cursed to be one of the most racist pieces of shit ever to walk the earth. This billionaire boor has ever since made it his life's mission to overcompensate for his childhood of his father agreeing that he deserved to be bullied, looking like a reject from Alvin and the Chipmunks, and presumably having a penis as withered and rotten as his heart, by exploiting as many people as possible, racking up lawsuit after lawsuit for everything from blocking unions to cutting corners to making cars that explode to get a little extra profit to recreating segregation in his factories. What a guy! Not content with having ruined the lives of the millions of people it takes to become a billionaire, however, Musk, following his daughter coming out as trans and him getting super ultra mega divorced, has decided to make it his life's new mission to install fascist governments in every country in the world.
I'm very excited for the IVEHADIT, and I think you are really the best hope for Germany.
But Musk's intervention in European politics is causing widespread consternation. Tonight, the French President Emmanuel Macron is meeting with Sir Keir Starmer at Chequers, where the subject is certain to come up.
There were rumours the world's richest man might bankroll reform. But Nigel Farage's mistake, it seems, was not backing Elon Musk all the way after his incendiary attacks on the government over historic child grooming scandals.
We don't want Italy as a culture to disappear. We don't want France as a culture to disappear. I think we have to maintain the sort of reasonable cultural identity of the various countries. or they simply will not be those countries.
And it turns out that when you have as much money as he does, that's actually worryingly easy. He bought the US government for less money than he used to buy Twitter. That's pretty depressing, but do you know what's even more depressing? On day one of him essentially having bought the presidency of the most powerful country on the planet, essentially performing a palace coup on the imperial hegemon by slipping it $20, he got on stage and did a Nazi salute.
Sometimes the real breakthrough doesn't come from a vision board. It comes from sitting down with someone who helps you process where you've been. That's why I love what Grow Therapy is doing. They make it easier to find licensed, diverse mental health providers who actually get you. With Grow, you can filter by insurance, specialty, availability, and even provider identity. They offer both virtual and in-person sessions, and most people are seen within 2 days. Many clients pay around $21 per session with insurance, and some even less depending on their plan. If part of your reinvention this season is working on your mental and emotional well-being, head to the link in my description for a quick way to get support and find a therapist.
Hey, stop playing with your fanny pack. You need the Bearskin Tactical Hoodie 4.0 to get comfortable in the wild. It's the ultimate 10-pocket utility hoodie for fishing, golf, hunting, camping, boating, or conquering foreign lands. Thousands of men trust the Bearskin hoodie to block wind and repel rain for incredible comfort and breathability wherever you go. Because the average hoodie made these days is weak, flimsy, and it has one weirdo kangaroo pocket in the front. And listen, you're not a kangaroo, you're a man. Choose between the original 340 GSM Bearskin or the brand new 210 GSM midweight Bearskin for milder days. Both are finished with chunky SAB zips and come in sizes up to 4XL. You're seeing this video because we want to offer you 60% off the Bearskin 4.0 with free delivery. And you may not see this video again, so click the button below now to reserve your order, or you can go to stopbadhoodies.com to claim your discount. Thousands of men already love wearing the Bearskin hoodie, with loads of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Because honestly, your average kangaroo hoodie these days is big, baggy, and useless, like wearing a trash bag with a fanny pack. That's why we built the Bearskin hoodie like a tank, with the ultimate combination of strength, storage, and breathability. And with the improved Winsulation technology on the waist, arms, and hood, you can customize your insulation to match the weather. Finally, the ultimate 3-in-1 travel jacket for men who choose to be prepared without being weighed down. Just like you, we hate carrying man bags, duffel bags, or messenger bags to keep our valuables safe and dry. Because hey, you're not a messenger, you're a man. That's why this is the world's only outdoor utility hoodie with 10 pockets to keep everything on you and nothing flapping behind you. So, does the Bearskin hoodie actually look good on a day-to-day basis? No, it looks fantastic. This is a hoodie you can take out into the wild, wear at home, or on the plane, or while you're climbing up a glacier on your hands and knees. With a fully adjustable design, you'll get that perfect square profile that's never too bulky or baggy, with a customized fit that's tailored to you. That's why everybody knows that guys look better in a bearskin. You see that material? It's called bearskin microfleece. That's because it's made from real polar bears. Not really though, but it's made with double-brushed microfleece that's warm enough for crisp mornings and breathable enough to wear all day. So, if you're ready, go to stopbadhoodies.com or click the button below to activate the 60% off deal.
Not once, but twice. That seems like a pretty deliberate choice, eh? Now, this is beyond plausible deniability, so naturally, loads of people are insisting that it's plausibly deniable. So, to entertain all the ways in which people have somehow convinced themselves that this is 1. not a Sieg Heil like in Hitler times, and 2, okay actually, we're going to go over the arguments in Elon's favour, by which I mean the most unhinged comments on this side of X.com, the everything app. Then we're going to look at the excuses peddled by the mainstream media and even organisations that claim to be anti-fascist and working in the interest of protecting the Jewish people, like the ADL, who produced the most limp-dicked response to this I've seen since I literally got my penis chopped off. And then we're going to explain why it's not plausible that Elon was just doing an I open my heart to you salute that has never existed before he did this and will continue to not exist because it's not a thing. On top of this, why Elon didn't do a Nazi salute because he has autism, because most autistic people, believe it or not, aren't Nazis. Why it's a Roman salute isn't an excuse, because the Roman salute, 1, doesn't exist out of fascist symbolism, and 2, because they're the same fucking thing. And then we're going to try and make sense of why anyone would possibly try to deny any of this, when it's plainly fucking obvious what's happening here. I'm Bridgette Empire, science and culture correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, and here are some extremely normal opinions from the most gruntled and hinged people on Elon Musk's increasingly far-right internet. Ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, I give you the first group of responders to the Roman salute video, the commenters in denial, or to give them a catchier name, the Delulu Bros. Roman salutes have always been a thing in anime. That's why you wackos will continue losing. America has rejected the demonic lies you opened the door to for the past 8 years. Grow up, bedwetter. You do know he's Jewish, right? What? No, he isn't. I genuinely can't tell if this commenter is being anti-Semitic or is just stupid. They love twisting everything out of context and placing evil on things. Leftist propagandists will stop at nothing. This time around, they aren't getting away with it. They are dishonest hacks. When you remove context to sell propaganda, you are the bad guys. Stop this nonsense. Elon did not make a Nazi salute. He sent his heart to the audience. Are you gonna accuse every police officer sitting in an intersection, stopping the cars coming from the front of a Nazi salute? We have enough real Nazis to fight. Elon Musk is not one of them. Thank you. They were just looking for the little small things to create their false narrative. No one is buying this regardation anymore. A wave is not allowed. Nervously walks up to the mic. I think it's correct that Elon is a strange guy who hulked out in a strange moment, ... But he very probably did not intentionally do the Nazi salute. Elon is already incredibly awkward. Now couple that with the adrenaline and euphoria he was feeling today. False accusations of Nazism are incredibly harmful during a time when the mainstream media is letting real Nazis, brackets, Hamas, have the mic without question. That's right. People fighting back against genocide, they're the real Nazis. The people doing Nazi salutes, they're cool and normal. And you can trust this opinion, because it's from the same person who called Greta Thunberg anti-Semitic for having a stuffed toy and thought a free parking sign was hate speech. This is why CNN is failing, and X is the single strongest news source on the planet. Lots of people are in denial about this obvious Sieg Heil. There are lots of different reasons people give for them being in denial, but ultimately they are all excuses. Excuses that come back to not wanting to accept that the richest man on the planet got on the biggest stage he's ever been on, stood behind the seal of the President of the United States, essentially the head of the global capitalist order, and openly did not 1, but 2 Nazi salutes, thinking he was being subtle by saying, "My heart goes out to you," before doing those. Not 1, but 2 Nazi salutes. Elon Musk is not a subtle man, however, and anyone who's telling you that he wasn't giving a Nazi salute, but was doing a "my heart goes out to you" salute, should be asked one very simple question. What's a "my heart goes out to you" salute? I've never heard of that in my life, and I've been alive for 33 years. Should I not have come across this apparently incredibly well-known gesture? If I were to tell someone, "my heart goes out to you," which I wouldn't, because people don't tend to say that outside of forlorn letters to faraway friends that are grieving a loved one or something similarly obscure, I can think of a couple gestures I might do. I might make a heart gesture with my hands. I might put my hand on my heart. I might reach out for their hand. What I wouldn't do is a fucking Nazi salute. And do you know what? I'm seeing far too many people thinking that they found a way to weasel out coming to terms with the fact that this is exactly what Elon Musk did by showing videos of, for example, Adolf Hitler doing the Nazi salute, because he doesn't slap his heart like Elon does in the video. The problem with this is, it's been 100 fucking years. And as you can see in these videos from American History X, a movie about a neo-Nazi, and from an actual neo-Nazi rally in America, neo-Nazis, particularly those in the United States of America, wouldn't you know it, do the Nazi salute in exactly the same way that Elon Musk does. They slap their palm to their chest and throw their hand out. This is a Nazi salute. For those of you still in denial about this, I present to you video evidence of how Elon Musk actually gestures when he says his heart goes out to people normally, because a video of that actually exists. With this in mind, the "My heart goes out to you" line was obvious cover for a salute he had previously planned, thinking he was being super cool and subtle.
There's a reason your family is the way it is. But where did all that come from? And from who? Ancestry can help you find out with detailed DNA results and inspiring family history memberships. Lucky you, it's on sale now.
There's DIY, and there's doing it yourself. It's the difference between being creative and being a creator. Between a homemade recipe and a household name. Between a daydream and a dream job. It's your business, your hard work. You do it yourself. Create your website on Wix.
I mean, this is a guy who thinks he's the smartest man on earth, so he probably figured no one would notice, because he actually has the emotional intelligence of a slice of stale toast.
When did you get a German Shepherd? What, Adolf here? See, what? Not Adolf Hitler, okay? Adolf Marx, Harpo. I love the Marx Brothers. Why are you busting my chops? You know this.
Of course, in the days since, after it became clear that people had, 1, noticed what he had very clearly done, and 2, were not exactly happy about it, Elon took to the social media app that he bought and subsequently completely ruined to not deny it, but instead whine about how everyone kept calling him a Nazi, while hinting that he did in fact do it to be a troll, which is the sort of logic you'd use if you were 5 years old. Which makes sense, because it's about the level of Elon Musk's sense of humour. Some of his very gruntled and very hinged remarks include this ancient meme of a bird not doing what it's told, ooh, such a naughty child, with this extremely boomer caption, I just can't help it, cry laughing emoji. And crying on the internet that his Twitter feed wasn't just constant praise of him anymore, which, to be fair, is basically the reason he bought the platform in the first place. As Musk himself put it, if I see one more damn Nazi salute in my feed, I'm gonna lose my mind, weird face emoji. This algorithm sucks. After which Elon then reverted to the most common modern fascist method, practiced by Elon Musk's friend and another Elon Musk defender, Benjamin Netanyahu, the "but Hamas" deflection. As if, even if Hamas were what Elon seems to think they are, that would make him doing repeated Nazi salutes any less bad. But no, apparently, according to Elon, the only people that could possibly think that are the radical leftists that are really upset they had to take time out of their busy day praising Hamas to call me a Nazi. And having clearly humiliated himself and exposed himself as a fascist, he was made to look even further guilty by having this generation's Adolf Hitler, famous Holocaust revisionist, and far-right fascist, currently wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity, including that big one that starts with a G, that was famously done by a certain Adolf Hitler of Hitler salute fame, Benjamin Netanyahu. The famous war criminal and mass murderer said this in Elon Musk's defense.
Elon Musk is being falsely smeared. Elon is a great friend of Israel. He visited after the October 7th massacre, in which Hamas terrorists committed the worst atrocity against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. He has since repeatedly and forcefully supported Israel's right to defend itself against genocidal terrorists and regimes who seek to annihilate the one and only Jewish state. I thank him for this.
So this is a new one. What Netanyahu is saying here, if I'm getting this right, is Elon Musk can't be a Nazi because he actively supports an ongoing genocide. not the greatest argument in your favor as someone who wants to not be perceived as a fascist, I've got to be honest. The closest thing I saw to Musk trying to edge towards a denial while being legally not in denial was this hefty huff of copium.
It was astonishing how insanely hard legacy media tried to cancel me for saying my heart goes out to you and moving my hand from my heart to the audience. In the end, this deception will just be another nail in the coffin of social media.
Of course, this non-apology was not helped by the fact that he was constantly tweeting pictures of people like Arnold Schwarzenegger with his arm raised taken out of context, and that he spent about a paragraph making a bunch of awful Nazi puns, which just made him look like he was enjoying the speculation, when clearly he was actually mad as fuck, and desperately wanted to make it look like he wasn't in fact mad, presumably before turning into a corn cob. Now, another cohort of defenders have decided to make an even lazier argument in Elon's defense, by showing stills of politicians from the Democratic Party apparently doing this same salute. And I don't know how to say this without sounding incredibly patronizing, but there's a reason they're sharing the photographs and not the videos. If you play the video of, say, Kamala Harris supposedly doing the Nazi salute, it's very clear that the photo caught her mid-hand movement. Whereas if you watch the full video of the Elon Musk Nazi salute, you see him hit the very pose, beat for beat, twice. In fact, it's worse than that, because not only did he do the Nazi salute twice, while obviously off his fucking tits on ketamine, thinking he was being super clever, and smirking as he said, "My heart goes out to you," as if that was just a thing people did, he then paraphrased a Nazi slogan. In his words,
"It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured."
What did he mean by that? I'll leave you to be the judge of that. But given he prefaced it by doing two incredibly blatant Sieg Heils, I would hazard a guess that he meant the American voter had secured the existence of our people and a future for white children. Is that far-fetched? Well, it's much less far-fetched than insisting that he did not hit the Nazi salute twice. I've seen that shit from multiple angles. Even people in the crowd clocked that it was a Nazi salute. As you can hear in this video.
Oh, careful. Careful with that salute. Yeah.
And you can add all of the context you like to it, because this is in context. Speaking of context, here are a select few tweets from the people I'm affectionately calling Context Bros, explaining how Elon Musk was doing the "my heart goes out to you" salute, a real thing that definitely exists, and not something that I heard of for the very first time in the wake of the richest man in the world doing a Nazi salute at a Nazi rally for the fascist president of the United States before carrying out the biggest mass deportation in American history, which is, if you know your history, Nazi shit. What? Why have you snipped the part where he says "my heart goes out to you"? He literally said "my heart goes out to you." That was the intent of the gesture. Try not to be this way. It's completely dishonest. You're such a fraud. Show the whole clip.
Elon's genuine moment, while the left creates fake narratives. Pathetic. American flag emoji.
Did you accidentally post this deceptive edit because you had to hurry back to molesting toddlers? "My heart goes out to you" is what he said right after. Play the full clip, dude. This BS is exactly why y'all lost, and will continue to lose. He's giving his heart out to the people, FFS facepalm emoji. Do you not have ears, too? It's him giving his whole heart. This isn't something very hard to understand. He said he was throwing his heart! Then he touched his heart and threw his arm out. Not a salute of any kind. Making stuff up, I think, is called misinformation.
I see you took out the words he was saying, which would have given actual context. Cry laughing emoji.
This is so dishonest. Democratic propagandists purposely cut the part which showed Elon saying "my heart goes out to you," which is what Elon was expressing. Here's the full clip. They still don't get why they lost. Classic media spin. They conveniently omit context to fit their narrative. Here's the truth in full view. Elon's empathy was clear. Maybe if they focused on facts, they'd understand the real story. Yawning emoji. In all seriousness, you're arsler beyond belief if you think Elon Musk did a Nazi salute here. It's clear he's gesturing from the heart, deeply moved by emotion and gratitude. He literally says, "Thank you. My heart goes out to you." These next few were in response to an actual historian of fascism, confirming that it is a Nazi salute. And as you can imagine, the fact that they had to argue with an actual expert did not make the Context Bros any more normal. Case in point. "My heart goes out to you." Clutches heart and gestures fling it into the crowd. Historian, it's a fascist salute. Historians should understand the importance of getting the context right. This is clearly not meant to be the Nazi salute.
It was literally a gesture of my heart goes out to you, historian of fascism. Eye roll emoji. Get a real job.
If you watch the video, he was thanking the crowd with all his heart and throwing his heart out to them.
He's throwing out love. That's it. End of story.
When Elon placed his hand over his heart and extended his arm and hand as if throwing his heart to the crowd, it can be metaphorically described as him figuratively tossing his passion and dedication out to the audience. This gesture symbolizes sharing his deepest feelings, aspirations, or commitment with the people, suggesting a profound connection or an act of giving his all to them. It's a powerful visual of Elon expressing a sense of unity, trust, or an emotional bond with the crowd, emphasizing his openness and vulnerability in that moment. Have you ever had an emotional and vulnerable moment? Yeah, me too. And surprise, surprise, it didn't make me a fucking Nazi. Also, if you were, just for the sake of argument, to become the context bro I'm talking to for a second, making a gesture of, my heart goes out to you, why would you do that with your palm facing down? Are you dropping your heart at their feet? Why is your hand doing that? Are you trying to stab them with your heart before it falls to the floor? Like, there are so many levels to which this doesn't work that it's just astounding. Even like standard liberals on Twitter understand what this salute is, and diagnose the problem too, that people can't accept what it is because they'll have to reckon with what that means. The fact that there is anyone left who can't is just astounding to me. In fact, I'm going to commit an act of heresy here. I'm going to quote a liberal, just to prove that you don't need to be a filthy, dirty socialist like me to understand what's going on here. I've been reflecting on this over the past day or so, and I've come to a realization. Many of my friends on the centre-right who are upset with me for making what I believe to be a very obvious observations aren't necessarily angry at me. They're angry at the implications of what I'm saying. The idea that neo-Nazism has entered the mainstream, potentially influencing the White House, is so alarming and existentially terrifying that it's easier to lash out at the messenger than confront the reality. If they accept this, it meant that the political home they've invested so much of their identity in, the movement they've championed for years, has become something so morally repugnant that accepting it feels like breaking their own brain. The cognitive dissonance is overwhelming. And I think that's exactly it. It's the same thinking that leads people into conspiracy theories. Sometimes it's easier to believe something completely batshit than accept a horrifying truth. Some people find it easier to believe 9/11 happened because George Bush wanted an excuse to invade Iraq, rather than reckon with the horror of American imperialism and the hatred it's brought out in many across the world, especially when they grew up believing that America was the land of the free, and that everyone in the world wanted to be an American. Sometimes the truth hurts so much, and is so fundamentally incompatible with a person's worldview, that they would much sooner believe that the earth is flat than believe in the reality happening right in front of them in plain view. Now, aside from the context bros and the people just plainly in denial, there are quite a few people online who, read the Wikipedia page for the Roman Empire and are convinced that they've worked out the daddy of all gotchas, the ultimate foil to any argument that this salute, which Nazis are doing on your screen besides Elon Musk, who is also doing the same salute as said Nazis, is a Nazi salute. Namely, the favourite argument of the Reddit bro. Gotchas, the ultimate foil to any argument that this salute, which Nazis are doing on your screen besides Elon Musk, who is also doing the same salute as said Nazis, is a Nazi salute. Namely, the favourite argument of the Reddit bro. The well actually. Well, actually, it's a Roman salute. Technically, they're two different things. Perhaps Elon Musk is just a scholar of ancient Rome, the same as myself. I've read 3 Wikipedia pages, and now my profile picture is a bust of Augustus. I'm 53 years old, and I've never had sex. Or, as the SPQRaboos would say it, Cecius Maximus. It's a Roman salute, chill out.
It can be interpreted in so many different ways.
That's the Roman salute that was adopted by the Nazis. Roman. It's a Roman salute.
Bruh! I love Rome and Roman Empire a lot, but this will be so out of the context for the next 4 years. Roman versus Nazi salute, Roman salute equals extending right arm outward angle, palm facing downward. Nazi salute equals raising right arm at an upward angle, palm facing downwards. What would you say, however, if I were to tell you that the Roman salute is the Nazi salute? And that either way, we don't have proof that the Romans ever used it. It was, in fact, popularized by fascists in the 20th century. Most famously Hitler, yes, but prior to him, Mussolini, and prior to him, the man who Mussolini basically plagiarized the aesthetics of fascism from wholesale, Italian poet, prolific and the man who invaded my city and turned it into the first proto-fascist experiment, Gabriele D'Annunzio. I'm still here in Rijeka, eating the, of course, traditional food of Croatia, which is, of course, the bakery calzone, the most Balkan food in the world. There he is, proto-fascist boy himself. Hey, we're at the gates of Rijeka, back in the Roman times, when it was Tarsatica. Can you see that? No. At the top, during the coup, there's a two-headed eagle, and one of the eagle heads was replaced by the Italian flag, which was in poor taste, but a very funny image. I mean, you have to hand it. The Roman salute has its origins in entertainment set in the Roman era, but written in the 19th century onwards. Far from being an actual piece of Roman culture that was brought back by those nostalgic for the days when Italy was an empire that straddled 3 continents, it first appeared in so-called toga plays, before spreading to other forms of art, and eventually to film, where the salute was established as a staple in the Roman setting, and to a larger audience than ever before. You can read about this in great detail in The Roman Salute by Martin M. Winkler, which much of this section draws from, which is a highly detailed study on, as Winkler puts it, the Roman or fascist salute and the various cultural contexts that were decisive for the origin of this gesture, its appropriation by totalitarian ideologies, and its dissemination. Thanks, Martin. It's not entirely surprising that people think that this gesture is indeed Roman, as this is a myth of the fascist party in Italy, its predecessors in D'Annunzio's circles, and Nazis and neo-Nazis thereafter spread, if not believed wholeheartedly. However, despite the propaganda seemingly having worked, and even modern shows like HBO's Rome featuring the Roman salute as a standard greeting of the Roman soldier, in Winkler's words, the term Roman salute is a misnomer. Not a single Roman work of art, sculpture, coinage, or painting displays a salute of the kind that is found in fascism, Nazism, and related ideologies. It is also unknown to Roman literature and is never mentioned by ancient historians of either Republican or Imperial Rome. The gesture of the raised right arm or hand in Roman and other ancient cultures that is attested in surviving art and literature had a significantly different function and is never identical with the modern straight arm salute. Whatever scholars knew about the truth of the Roman salute's origins, the popular imaginary had been set in stone by first theatre and then cinema. And fascists from Italy and later the rest of the world took the myth of the Roman salute and carried it with them, and with it, the spirit of D'Annunzio, Mussolini, and Hitler. In fact, the mythic origins of this salute are important. After all, part of what makes fascism is its appeal to a mythical past, a past full of glory that we can reach again if only we stamp out the weaknesses of the modern age and the degenerates. Fascism is built upon myths, and this in turn built fascism. Gabriele D'Annunzio himself made his fame as a poet, and he was prone to fanaticism all of his life. He campaigned tirelessly to get Italy into World War I, believing it would bring glory to the nation and save its people's hearts. It quite decisively did not. D'Annunzio was also a huge misogynist and a serial so yeah, this is the kind of ideology that attracts those kind of people. No surprises there. But because D'Annunzio was a poet and not a historian, and believed in the glory and prestige of military might and action for action's sake, he was the perfect person to swallow and spread this myth. Just the right mixture of dramatic, charismatic, and violent.
Allora, avevo dei regionali con me, cioè tipo i regionali appunto brillantissimi. Allora ho detto, rompete assolutamente tutte quelle scatole che le vogliono rompere a me. Ci fu appunto un terrore terribile.
The salutes of classical antiquity was demonstrably not the true model of the Roman salute, although in the 1920s such a perspective was foisted on a people willing enough to believe that it was. The one to do so was indeed Gabriele the Nuncio, but the Nuncio was not at all the first to employ the raised arm salute in the 20th century. He was the first to give it an explicit ideological and propagandistic turn, when he made it part of his rituals at Fiume in 1919, and the salute was soon adopted by Mussolini and the Italian fascists. Gabriele D'Annunzio, one of Italy's most beloved poets at the time, was deeply involved in a 1914 film about Roman history, Cabiria, set during the Second Punic War. D'Annunzio was so revered at the time that despite coming in fairly late to the process, the film was eventually marketed as Gabriele D'Annunzio's Cabiria. For his part, D'Annunzio, a narcissist to the very core, claimed falsely to be the film's true creator, and the inventor of its plot. In reality, it was already shot, and D'Annunzio had changed the title, some of the names, and rewrote the caption to give it a more dramatic flair. In the movie, the raised arm salute is used by both Romans and Africans as a greeting, inheriting this gesture from the theatre, and since we're talking silent movies, relying on exaggerated gestures to tell the story. 5 years after he invaded the box office, in 1919, D'Annunzio, with a force of approximately 2,000 men, invaded and occupied the city of Rijeka in Yugoslavia, modern Croatia. And I'm at the port where he was finally kicked out by bombardment by the Italian Navy. And orders from the International Order, which, not good for humanity, I suppose. Over here, you see the streets, which he coveted so much. As a long-time border city, at various times part of Italy, Hungary, Austria, Yugoslavia, Croatia, and it had a mixed ethnic population, as did pretty much all of the Balkans, and the Adriatic coast in particular was a reliable mixture of Italians, Croats, and other ethnic groups. But in an age of nationalism, being multicultural was problematic. Gabriele D'Annunzio, following outrage by Italian nationalists at Rijeka's exclusion from the now unified Italy, and in an atmosphere of rising nationalism from Italians within Rijeka, claimed the city of Fiume, as he called it, and ruled it as his own private proto-fascist state. Until Christmas Eve in 1920, when the post-World War I order finally had enough with its rogue Italian sex criminal sitting on land that had been given in international treaties to Yugoslavia, on account of all the, Slavs there, and the Royal Italian Army bombarded the city from the sea.
Hey everyone, so I am asking you to please make a contribution to the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. And
returning it to the people. Well, kind of. While the aesthetics, ideas, and culture of D'Annunzio's Fiume would outlast his occupation by an order of magnitude, that doesn't mean that being part of the proto-fascist city-state was the glorious past that some people would have you believe. Violent street thugs roamed the streets. People were, as you'd expect from fascism, being killed openly for being different. Local Croats suffered constant intimidation. D'Annunzio's followers proclaimed the death penalty for anyone disloyal to the cause of Fiume, causing most prominent Croats to leave. The Croatian population regrouped in the suburb of Sušak, just south of the centre, making the Riječina River the new border, cutting the city in two, the fascist death cult on one side and the local population on the other. For D'Annunzio, the Croats were simply a culturally inferior people who lacked history, and therefore had no real right to rule over the eastern shores of the Adriatic. He also professed the lazy anti-Semitism of the Salon Radical, calling the recently formed League of Nations an institution created to further the interests of international banking Jews. The idea that Italian nationalism would define itself through disdain for others was typically D'Annunzian and typically fascist. Of course, these ideas would spread to one Benito Mussolini. During these short few years that D'Annunzio ruled Rijeka like the little poetry Hitler that he was, he popularized a certain greeting, however, one that he had become intimately familiar with from films of ancient Rome and his own movie, Cabiria. A major part of D'Annunzio's political strategy was to strengthen ties among himself, his men, and the population of Fiume. In this, he was entirely successful. One important part was D'Annunzio's custom of addressing the people in a manner that was to set a pattern for dictators in the early 1920s and 1930s. Nearly every day, the Comandante harangued the mob from the balcony of the palace. The spiritual communion between him, the legionaries, and the people was complete. His words nourished his listeners, who had been starved of hope. They constituted a sort of miraculous sustenance. Thus, the life of Fiume became daily more paradoxical and more sublime. It fits in with this elevation of D'Annunzio into the sphere of the superhuman hero, not to say of the demigod. He was accorded a more than human accolade when people referred to or addressed him, religiously charged terms like Salvatore or Redentore that had no trace of irony about them. In this, D'Annunzio found himself in a direct line, extending back to Roman emperors, some of whom received divine titles and cults, and extending forward to Mussolini and Hitler, who both were accorded quasi-religious status. D'Annunzio's reign at Fiume has been vividly described in the following terms. Fiume became a symbol of patriotic fervour and youthful vitality. Futurists, ex-servicemen, nationalists, syndicalists, anarchists, and adventurers fought there from all over Italy. They swaggered around in cloaks and daggers, literally, bullied the local citizens, and enjoyed themselves immensely. The regime was a permanent fiesta, full of processions and ceremonies, of dancing and slogans. D'Annunzio's idea of democratic decision-making was rather like Mussolini's later. Long rhetorical speeches from balconies to the eager crowds below, punctuated by massive acclamations. D'Annunzio also invented many of the other trappings of the later fascist regime, including the militia, the Roman salute, and even the meaningless war cry. However, D'Annunzio's Fiume was not just comic opera. The Comandante issued proclamations urbi et orbi. Closely connected to D'Annunzio's custom of regularly appearing before the people is his introduction of the raised arm salute into his political and military protocol. In imitation of the epic early films, not least Cabiria, D'Annunzio appropriated the raised arm salute for his own purposes. Now a more rigid and rigorously observed form of the salute became a propagandistic symbol for D'Annunzio's political aspirations and later for those of all Italy, to which Fiume by this time belonged. The memory of the glorious Roman past played a large part in all this. That D'Annunzio had himself been a war hero also helped. He was now called consul, and his soldiers, many of them Arditi from the Great War, were called legionaries. The Federazione Nazionale dei Legionari Fiumani, or Praetorians. As such, they needed a sign to distinguish themselves visually from their political adversaries, one that was readily comprehensible, even to outsiders, as being supposedly ancient. So D'Annunzio and his legionaries adopted the raised arm salute. Long familiar to all and sundry from the screen, and now declared to be il saluto romano, i.e. the real thing. They also invented a new salute, the raised right arm, chosen among the many gestures of the Greco-Roman orators. It was clearly superior to the humble bow or bourgeois handshake. Its limits seemed the sky. At the same time, it seemed, symbolically, to thrust a dagger into the throat of an invisible enemy. D'Annunzio's introduction of raised arm salutes at Fiume vividly illustrates that a gesture from stage to screen, one that had previously functioned equally well in various invented situations, private and public, political and military, can be adopted for a specific ideological purpose. Through appropriation for a new political reality, it became thoroughly militarized. As a result, it could never again be perceived as a harmless or innocent gesture. But in the process of this appropriation, the salute also lost the wide variety of arm movements that had been possible before. It became rigid, and from now on had to be performed in a snappy and pithy manner to achieve the visual impact it was intended for. And from D'Annunzio, this salute would be passed on to Mussolini, and from Mussolini to Hitler, and from Hitler to the neo-Nazis of post-war America, and eventually to Elon Musk. An unbroken line of one gesture. The Roman salute is the Nazi salute is the Sieg Heil. Although Twitter idiots like those we quoted from before would not be the first people to try and make this distinction, however falsely. Winkler, in his work, quotes the literature of an American Phalangist party, insisting that though yes, the Nazi salute and the Roman salute appear quite similar, they are distinct, and the Roman salute is a historical illusion, coming down a different tradition and used by various cultures. These Phalangists were, unsurprisingly for Phalangists, wrong. The path of the Roman salute, once it is adopted by D'Annunzio, goes in a straight line, down the fascisms of the 20th century and directly into the 21st, unbroken. On the aesthetics of Mussolini's Italy, Winkler quotes Sept and Watson, saying, "Many of D'Annunzio's legionaries now joined the fascist militia, which provided the best prospects of action, and accepted Mussolini's leadership. But though the fascist party broke with D'Annunzio and Fiume radicalism, it showed that it had learned much from the Fiume adventure. The uniforms and the black shirts, the Roman salute, the oceanic rallies, the party hymn, the organisation of the militia into cohorts and legions, commanded by consuls, the weird cries, the demagogic technique of dialogue between orators and massed audiences, all the symbolism, mystique and style with which the world was later to grow so familiar, were plagiarised from D'Annunzio, who in this sense too could justly claim to be one of the spiritual fathers of fascism." And later, the German adaptation comes to be what we might now call the Sieg Heil, in the exact same way, an extra myth placed on top of it from a false German past that justified its use. In the German appropriation of fascist rituals, the raised arm salute and the accompanying words Heil Hitler had become part of what was now called the German salute, Deutscher Gruß. Its words followed the pattern of Ave Imperator, Italy's Latin greeting for Mussolini. But since the Italians already claimed the straight-arm gesture as their own, not least through its very name, it clearly would not do to adopt the gesture and preserve its foreign name. A new term was necessary to establish the Germans' independence from the Italians and to lay claim to the gesture as being innately German. In fact, Hitler in his own words credits Mussolini with its invention, who we know took it from D'Annunzio, and such the line remains unbroken. "The raised arm as a German salute, that has a quite different style. I made the salute at the party long after the Duce had adopted it. I read the description of the sitting of the Diet of Worms, in the course of which Luther was greeted with the German salute, and was assured him that he was not being confronted with arms, but with peaceful intentions." As with D'Annunzio and Mussolini before him, Hitler grasped at straws to justify his use of the salute with myth. A myth of an imaginary all-powerful Germany, just a few million murders away from returning. But he too recognised its origin. And the American neo-Nazis that would teach it to Musk, well, they're called neo-Nazis for a reason. Just as this city was once invaded and brutalised by fascism, however, it did eventually leave. I say that. It came back in World War II under Mussolini, and then the Ustasha, the Nazi puppet regime in Croatia, before Yugoslav socialist partisans finally got them to fuck off at the tail end of World War II. But they did leave. All fascist regimes have ended, eventually. For fascism to thrive, it needs an enemy. And if you make an enemy of people, people will fight back, and they have a lot to fight for. They have an existential fight ahead of them. If you're fighting to survive, you're not going to go down easy. And even when fascists win their first few battles, eventually you run out of enemies. And the snake either eats its own tail, or has to explain to the populace why the glory it was promised never came, while thousands remember the people who died in the name of the regime and plot its end. D'Annunzio might have died at the age of 74, retired and his dream long since abandoned, but Hitler died in a bunker in Berlin. The Red Army got its revenge, and he shot himself, defeated, humiliated. Mussolini's body was strung up in the public square, the former Duce displayed, upside down, in utter repudiation of everything he stood for. If American fascism escalates to the heights of the monsters of World War II, it is very unlikely that its perpetrators will end up with as peaceful an end as Gabriele D'Annunzio, retired and free from the consequences of their actions. After D'Annunzio was forced out of Rijeka, there was only a short decade or two of reprieve before his ideas returned to the city with a vengeance. Under the command of Giovanni Palatucci, a man once known as the Italian Schindler, based on a widely believed myth about his heroism, 3/4 of the city's Jews were sent to Risiera di San Saba, the only death camp on Italian soil. None returned alive.
Over 8,000 men have permanently broken free from the P word by watching one single video training that you can actually watch by clicking the link below. But I want to give you 2 reasons why you should not watch that video right now.
Alright, there's no good way to segue out of this topic, so I'm just going to do the most awkward transition of all time and say, let's talk about all the ableist pieces of shit that think Elon Musk did a fascist salute not because he's a fascist, but because he's autistic. As if autism just makes you a Nazi. I might chime in here to say that I have plenty of autistic friends, and as far as I know, none of them have ever done a Nazi salute, by accident or otherwise. But that's not what the internet would have you believe.
Post the full video, bruh. He's just getting out the chaotic energy. He's on the spectrum.
My cousin does this too. He has this kind of energy when he gets overly excited. It's the autism. Watch him talk about it on his SNL episode. Elon just being socially awkward Elon. That him saying my heart goes out to all of you with extra tism on the side. As a person with a strong track record of criticizing Elon Musk, I feel extremely confident asserting that this was not a Nazi salute. Elon Musk is a friend to the Jews. This is a man with Asperger's, exuberantly throwing his heart to the crowd. We don't need to invent outrage. I think he literally has the motor skills and coordination of a toddler. I think his brain knew that he should do some type of action, but physically lacks the coordination to pull off any move that resembles normal human behavior.
Elon is autistic. He isn't a Nazi. I'm angry right now. I have a brother who is autistic, and I know a thing or two about this. Most autistic people have difficulty expressing feelings. Elon does not express feelings very often. When he puts his hand over his heart, and then puts his hand out towards the crowd, he was attempting to share love. That's actually very difficult for many autistic people. He felt strongly about something and was trying to express that. For many people to suggest that he's making an NZ1 salute is completely beyond acceptable and shows their ignorance or that they are being intentionally deceptive. Elon was expressing love. Stop trying to make it into anything else.
Roman salute is just a natural reflex in white men upon victory the Jews taught them to suppress. Elon just slipped up because he's autistic, lol.
I shouldn't have to be the one to explain this to you, but being autistic doesn't make you a Nazi. Out of all of the diagnostic criteria for autism, nowhere does it say, is sympathetic to the politics of the Third Reich. Nor will anything about your opinions on the Jews turn up on any Am I Autistic quiz you might take, unless you've ended up on the weird part of the internet by accident. In fact, given how much emphasis fascism, especially those flavours of fascism that take direct inspiration from the Nazis in Germany, places on eugenics, it is in the interest of people with autism to be anti-fascist, and most of them are. The Nazis famously sent a lot of disabled people to camps, and considered them degenerate, bad for society. In fact, the term Asperger's actually has its origins in the Third Reich, and was coined by a Nazi who explicitly wanted a way to protect children on the spectrum that he deemed intelligent enough to be worth living, while still actively sending the rest to their deaths. This man, Hans Asperger, was responsible for the systematic murder of children with disabilities in Vienna under the Nazis, and actively sent many children to their deaths for the crime of not being the right type of autistic for the Nazis. The disabled are usually one of the first groups that fascists go after. Trying to imply that autistic people have some special connection to Nazism is so insulting, I can barely contain my fucking anger. Now, of course, some of the ableist arguments around this aren't saying that Musk is doing fascist gestures because he's autistic, it's just that he can't control how he acts, which is also nakedly ableist and weirdly infantilizing. Autistic people are people. They're responsible for their actions. They have opinions and politics just like everyone else. Some of them are shitty. Some of them are great, just like everyone else. And this characterization of all autistic people as toddlers who are barely capable of sentient thought is ridiculously bigoted. Even if he did do the salute by accident, he wouldn't have done it twice. And even if he hadn't, he's agreed with Nazis on his platform enough. He follows and shares posts by prominent neo-Nazis. He speaks at rallies for Italian fascists and for the AfD. To attribute this fascist gesture to him being disabled is just evil. Disabled people are people. They are not mysterious spirits that are completely unpredictable. We're fucking people. I have ADHD and I'm a socialist. Being ADHD didn't make me a socialist, and there are plenty of people with ADHD who have awful politics. Just because your brain works differently to other people does not mean that you are not in control of your own actions. Elon Musk chose to do a Nazi salute. Do not try to imply that to point this out is going after someone for being disabled. That is the kind of sentiment that is truly insulting to disabled people. One of the infuriating things about all of this is how easily these sentiments are swallowed by mainstream figures. People desperate to cling onto something, anything, to believe that there's some other explanation for the mysterious gesture Elon was doing on that stage. People who desperately want the world to be normal so that they don't have to change their perspective, so that they can go to brunch and not have to think about the open fascism right in front of their eyes. Even organizations that are, by definition, supposed to be the people on the lookout for this shit are doing their level best to deny the evidence of their own eyes and ears. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, for example, is exactly the kind of organisation that is supposed to clock this shit and make sure that it stops before it spreads. Instead, after spending the last 2 years calling anyone who opposes the slaughter of innocent Palestinians little Hitlers, in response to the richest man on earth literally doing the famous salute of history's most notorious murderer of Jews, couldn't even bring themselves to acknowledge that what Elon Musk was doing was anything more than a little old oopsie. This is a delicate moment. It's a new day, and yet so many are on edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media only adds to the anxiety. It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. But again, we appreciate that people are on edge. In this moment, all sides should give one another a bit of grace. Perhaps even the benefit of the doubt, and take a breath. This is a new beginning. Let's hope for healing and work toward unity in the months and years ahead. And yet, back in April, ADL head Jonathan Greenblatt compared the keffiyeh scarf worn by Palestinians and in solidarity with Palestinians to the swastika.
If you wouldn't tolerate it if someone is wearing a swastika on their arm, I'm sorry, you shouldn't tolerate it if they're wearing a keffiyeh.
So, Nazi salutes, not anti-Semitic. Keffiyehs, the most anti-Semitic thing on the planet. Got it. What a cool and normal organisation that definitely has its priorities straight. I'm sure they're very concerned about Trump releasing a bunch of January 6th insurrectionists who wear shirts that say 6 million wasn't enough, and aren't just cheering Trump on because he happens to be chill with letting Israel get away with whatever crimes it wants to do on the people of Palestine, the West Bank, Syria, and Lebanon. In fact, the ADL exposed their organisation's hypocrisy in this saga within a matter of days, after taking the time to make public statements defending Musk's use of a literal Nazi salute. After Elon Musk made a load of awful puns about the top brass of the NSDAP instead of apologising, they bravely condemned Elon Musk's puns. So, awful jokes, bad. Nazi salute, good. Am I getting this right, ADL? I would have thought that the one that was much worse than the other was the complete opposite way round, but I suppose we all have strong feelings about bad comedy. Either way, the fact that they came to Musk's defense about the salute is just absolutely bizarre. The former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Stephen Pollard, is also, unsurprisingly, denying what this so blatantly is. You don't really think Musk was making a Nazi salute. You just think you've been handed a gotcha you can use to start the fake outrage over. And it says so much more about you than it does about Musk. It's pathetic. Speaking of faux outrage, this is an excerpt from a pamphlet Stephen Pollard co-wrote saying that NHS privatisation is good because Hitler liked the NHS. Yes, that's not a joke. This is how unserious these people are. And here is Pollard again, implying that Jeremy Corbyn referring to billionaires being bad is anti-Semitic. So, free healthcare, anti-Semitic. Thinking billionaires should pay more in taxes, anti-Semitic. Hitler salutes? Fine, actually. What a credible thing for someone supposedly fighting for the rights of the Jewish people to think. Brendan O'Neill wrote in The Spectator this week that Elon Musk didn't make a fascist salute, which was a huge relief, coming from the paper that published the very real article in praise of the Wehrmacht only a short few years ago. The author of the article, "We Need to Start Befriending Neo-Nazis," Bethany Mendel, took to X.com, the Everything app, to make it clear that Elon Musk wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, which I'm sure came as a disappointment to her, because then they'd have been able to be friends. To the people who have never donned a hostage dog tag or met with a hostage family, as Elon Musk has done. To the people who have never been to Auschwitz, as Elon Musk has. To the people who are accusing Elon Musk of anti-Semitism while staying silent about on American college campuses, kindly sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. Stop weaponizing Jew hate as you stay silent about it in every other context across our society. I sat at the Netanyahu address in front of Congress and saw Elon Musk clear across the room. He sat a few seats away from a rescued hostage and her dad. I saw their interactions in the halls before the speech. That's a man who gives a damn. I'm grateful for it. And then you have the newspaper headlines from various mainstream outlets who, despite also having seen what we all just saw, just refused outright to call it what it was. Elon Musk gestures during a rally on the inauguration day of US President Trump. Elon Musk draws outrage over odd-looking salute at Trump inauguration celebration. Right-wing extremists are abuzz about Musk's straight-arm salute. Elon Musk's gesture at Trump rally draws scrutiny. Musk's strange gesture to a crowd of supporters. Elon Musk's hand gesture at Trump rally draws internet attention. Elon Musk stirs controversy with hand gesture at Trump event. Elon Musk ignites online speculation over the meaning of a hand gesture.
If you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is declining in the polls. And President Trump responded, says Fox
All of this is just cowardly behavior. This is beyond plausible deniability. Everyone can see that this was a Nazi salute. He did it twice too. This wasn't a tripping and falling into a Sieg Heil situation or whatever bollocks these newspaper headlines would have you believe. He did it twice. He knew what he was doing. He wanted to do it. He wants to communicate to Nazis that he's one of them. And he knows that there is a whole swath of people who would make a million excuses to look away from what is blindingly obvious to everyone with more smarts than a single-celled organism that this is a Nazi salute. A Sieg Heil, a Roman salute, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing, and that's what it is. And what do you know? No one on the far right is denying it behind closed doors. They're celebrating. They know this was for them. We know this was for them. The only people in denial are the people who are praying that they can just go back to brunch, not realizing that they're shaping up to be background characters in Zone of Interest, just so they can avoid confronting a horrible truth, that fascism has arrived. In America, it's happening right now, and they simply don't have the courage to even identify it. Never mind the courage you need to actually do something about it, to fight it. Something we've been taught all our lives correctly is the right thing to do. And it is. But they will never do it. They would rather deny that fascism is here, even as people are literally Sieg Heiling behind the presidential seal, than confront the fact that they should be doing something to stop it when they really can't be fucking bothered. And if they won't do anything about it, well, someone has to. And just in case you were still in any doubt about this, the Nazis think this was a Nazi salute. The only people that don't are in serious denial or are trying to convince other people that it's fine, actually, because their beliefs actually align with those of Musk, or the NSDAP, because, let's be honest, that Venn diagram is a circle. Look at this video by proud neo-Nazi Nicolas Fuentes.
And then the, straight up, that was a serious Roman. It wasn't even like a subtle, like a wave, like one of these, like a Laura Ingraham. Remember when Laura Ingraham did that? That was a straight up, Sieg Heil, loving Hitler energy. that was like a straight up with intensity Roman salute.
Or the reels on Twitter putting the salute next to others throughout history. This is not subtle, and no one thinks it is, apart from people doing the political equivalent of sticking their fingers in their ears and shouting, "La la la, I can't hear you." This goes beyond dog whistles. This is just whistles, it's foghorns. Fascists usually try to go for some degree of plausible deniability for this shit, but Elon Musk does not do subtlety. He just out and did it. This is not a dog whistle, this is a foghorn. And the people ignoring this and acting like it didn't happen will look the other way at the more and more overt fascist actions of the Trump administration that are coming, with Musk as an active partner, if not the man behind the throne. And while many governments will get on their knees for Elon Musk due to just how much money and influence he has, we can all see what he did, and in fact, they can too, when they're being honest about it. For example, a collaboration between Led by Donkeys and Center for Political Beauty, after German politicians tried to downplay Musk's salute, despite it being extremely illegal in Germany, projected the image onto the Tesla Gigafactory in Berlin. And it turns out that when someone else projects this exact same image, that it is illegal. Because now the protesters are in hot water, with the public prosecutor's office investigating them in suspicion of using unconstitutional symbols. So, it's okay for Musk, but not for everyone else. If you deem the symbol to be hate speech, which it is, then you have to admit that Musk did said hate speech. It's literally his image on the building. It's almost as if there's some sort of double standard at play, where the rich get away with disgusting and hateful behavior while ordinary people get punished, but that can't be right, can it?
My people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's incredible.
In the past couple of decades, in the age of the internet, fascists spread online through the memification of plausible deniability. You could post a Pepe the Frog with a Hitler moustache on 4chan and hide behind "it's just a joke, it's just edgy humour." But for this defense to work, the cover story needs to be at least somewhat plausible. That's how it spreads. This stuff isn't allowed to fester for its own sake. Lots of people like to think they're into edgy humour, and some deeply evil stuff. Some of the people enjoying that edgy humour take the sentiment seriously, as many posters also intended. And the more these things are seen as jokes, the further they can spread, and the more people they can reach who do believe fascist ideas sincerely and can now be more open about what they believe, because they have this new layer of plausible deniability. This might have been what Elon was going for. Maybe he genuinely believed that by saying "my heart goes out to you," only Nazis would notice that he was doing a Nazi salute. But that's not how it went down, because we all know what a Nazi salute looks like, and no one has ever said "my heart goes out to you" followed by a Sieg Heil. That's never happened before. And so we're left with this. There are a lot of people, more than any sane world should have, in denial about the evidence of their lying eyes. We're left with what I'm calling implausible deniability. No longer are the signals for the far right confined to dog whistles, signals that Nazis understand but that can fly under the radar to those who lack the knowledge or right connections to be alert to them. No longer are we hiding behind the "it's just a joke" defense. Still the primary way people get away with far right sentiment in our modern day. To the people who agree, it's serious. To the people who don't, it's just a joke. Why are you taking it seriously? This is a tactic that at least works on some people. No one is buying this but those who cannot handle what it would mean to accept why they are in denial. And what the moral imperatives would be if someone was indeed on stage behind the presidential seal making literal Nazi salutes. Because that calls for taking a stand. And taking a stand is hard. Even for those of us who believe ourselves to have strong moral compasses. Those of us who take pride in ourselves for fighting for what's right, for sticking to our principles. And this is especially hard when the thing you have to take a stand against is the global imperial hegemon. In the days after writing the initial draft of the script, more and more things kept coming out that kept making this story worse. So I imagine that when this video comes out, the situation will have escalated further. As I sat down to finalise the script, for instance, footage emerged of Elon Musk speaking at an AfD rally. AfD, or Alternative for Deutschland, is Germany's far-right party. It is neo-Nazi in all but name, and in that case only because that would be illegal. Following days of condemnation for Sieg Heiling on the stage, as a representative of the new US administration, he made it his business to tell a room full of wannabe brown shirts that they should just forget what the Nazi party did, that it's fine, that we can move past it, it's not your fault, and we should all in fact campaign exactly like they did. In Musk's own words,
I'm very excited for the AfD, and I think you're really the best hope for Germany. I think some things that, something I think that is just very important is that people take pride in Germany and being German. This is very important. It's okay to be proud to be German. This is a very important principle, and it's okay. It's good to be proud of German culture, German values, and not to lose that in some sort of multiculturalism that dilutes everything. I think we want to have unique cultures in the world. We want to have people that have, we don't want everything to be the same everywhere, where it's just one big sort of soup. We want to have something where it's.
Car stock is so back. It's the return of #1 Cochrane's epic pre-owned savings fest. 13.
You go to different countries and you experience a different culture, and it is unique and special and good, and that the German government takes actions to protect its citizens, and make sure that it seeks the health and well-being of the German people, the German people are sort of really an ancient nation, goes back thousands of years. I was even sort of read Julius Caesar's account of first encountering the German tribes in the Gaulic campaigns, and he was like, wow, very impressive. These are very, very powerful warriors. So, like, you know, I think there's, like, frankly, too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that. People, you know, children should not be guilty of the sins of their parents, or even let alone their parents, their great-grandparents, maybe even. And we should be optimistic and excited about a future for Germany. That's really my message, is be optimistic, excited, and preserve German culture and protect the German people.
If you are still in denial at this point, you will never be convinced. Also, just for the record, Elon Musk's daughter says that it was a Nazi salute, so that's about as close as we're going to get to confirmation from someone remotely honest who's close to the situation. No matter how many Ben Shapiros you have tweeting pictures of him bringing Musk with him to Auschwitz after he agreed with straight-up Nazi-level anti-Semitism on Twitter to prove that he's not anti-Semitic, but he's doing a Hitler salute, and the only reason you took that picture was because he was being anti-Semitic on the timeline, I'd say make it make sense. But you can't, because we've moved far past plausible deniability. Even after I wrote all this and recorded a bunch of it, he was on a stage with Italian fascists talking about keeping the bloodlines pure of a bunch of European countries. He is a fascist. This was intentional. We have reached the realm of implausible deniability. Denial for the sake of denial. Because the price of acceptance would be admitting that you're siding with Nazis. Or, in the case of those less far right, accepting that there are Nazis out in the open, that it is your moral duty to stop at any cost. Go for your master race. Fled to a bunker and shot in the face. Strung upside down in the public square. Guess you want to end up there. Follow your leader, Nazi scum. One of us must die, I promise I won't be the one. Master race. Fled to a bunker and shot in the face. Strung upside down in the public square. Guess you want to end up there. Follow your leader, Nazi scum. One of us must die, I promise I won't be the one.
What's the name of this?
This name of this one is Nazi Punks Fuck Off.
Ready? Are you ready?
What? Where? Don't you feel nice and relaxed right now, Klaus?
Not supposed to for this team. I'm angry.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. Let's see if we can get it a tiny bit faster than that
Tape's
last
rolling.
one, too. What's this, Nazi Punks Take 3? Hold it! Okay, just start again.
Real fast.
Nazi Punks Fuck Off Take 3.
What a man! 5 each over the police state wins. You cook your goose in a trash our halls. Trash your bag if you got real balls. You still think plastic guys look cool. The real Nazis run your school. Those just businessmen and cops and the real boys want to be the first to go. Nazi punks, Nazi punks, Nazi punks. Fuck off! Not smuts, fuck off! You be the first to go, you be the first to go, you be the first